Hey everybody, this is Nick von Walkerbarth and you're listening to the VonDubCast. If you want to skip right to the interview, you can skip about 8 minutes. But before you do, please do a couple things for me. Subscribe to this podcast, share it with all your friends, follow me on Instagram, Twitter, all those things. It really helps. And if you want to go the extra mile, leave a review or check out any of the things that the guests mention in the intro or things that they want to plug and just support them. That's all I can ask from you guys. Thanks. Hey everybody, welcome to episode number 69 of the podcast, Giggity. Really special one for you guys today. I'll try and keep the intro nice and short because this is quite the long episode. Me and Shaun, it was Saturday night on that trip to Lloyd and we had a few beers and we just jumped right into this conversation and it went for over 3 hours. You know, it was one of those ones where you just don't even realize the time flying by. You only really notice by how many beers you drank, and I think by the cans at the end of it, it was a pretty good one. But hopefully we kept it somewhat on the rails for you guys. This is a really special one for me. We discuss a lot about our respective podcasts. So just a little bit about Shaun. Shaun, if you haven't heard it, go back to episode 26 to see the first time he's on the podcast. Shaun's from Lloydminster, Alberta, and he started a podcast probably 2 or 3 years ago now and has really done some special things with it and has really taken it to places that I want to take mine. And a lot of the reasons why we're doing this podcast lineup and a lot of the struggles and the hurdles that we're coming up against. Shaun also has a full-time job. He works for Baker Hughes and I have a full-time job and we're both trying to balance this, and he's got a family that he has to balance as well. And I've got some other things, and it was interesting to be pushed on some of my ideas because since Shaun has been down such a similar path, he can call bullshit on some of the answers I was giving and really force me to push past some of those surface level answers into the depths of what I really feel. And I think that was something I've wanted to do for a long time, but there's certain reasons, like you'll hear on this podcast, of what scares you away from doing that. And it's something that I've been seeing recently, especially. It's kind of funny that we had this conversation and then, really centered around that work-life balance and trying to pursue something like this with work. And then to have the last couple weeks of work and just what chaos and madness it was. Some of the, I know I say this a lot, but it seems like it was almost the craziest weeks I've had in this role with my day job. And it's interesting to see because it's being forced to answer the questions like Shaun was doing on this podcast. And like you'll hear, it really got me thinking about those questions and how I would answer them, given another try and really thinking and sitting when I'm meditating on why I'm doing this and what I get out of the podcast and what I get out of work and where the balance falls and what types of things, why am I struggling so hard and trying to not just treat it as a whole, but to dive down into the things themselves and what aspects of work in the podcast are causing me, joy or pain in different ways. And that's been a very interesting process. And I feel like I was hesitant to do that because I didn't want to, I think at a certain level, I didn't want to find the answers that I knew were there, which is very often the case, I think, when people shy away from things. But I was really thankful to have this podcast and have Shaun to be a sounding board in that sense, to really push myself to investigate those places that need to be investigated. And it gave me a really good outlook. And like I said, I've been thinking about this conversation for a long time and I cannot wait to get it released to you guys. So I'm really excited this one's finally coming out. Couple things to promote. I know I've been pumping it up all throughout Lloydminster May here with the episodes, but Bike for Breakfast, it's a initiative that Shaun and Kenny Rutherford from a couple podcasts ago and a bunch of other great guys from Lloyd are putting together. It's a bike ride from Lloydminster, Saskatchewan to Tufnell, Saskatchewan. It's about 1,000 kilometers round trip, a little bit more even. And they're going to be raising money for schools around the Lloydminster area. And I think that's just such a amazing initiative in itself. But when you I can't remember if we talked about it on this podcast. We might talk about it in this podcast now that I mention it, but to hear both Ken and Shaun talk about what conversations led to them taking that on was so special to me. And they were talking about how they both have podcasts and they talk the talk and talk about these things that they want to see changed in the world, but they were a little bit disappointed themselves on some of the action that they haven't taken. And that was the impetus to start this up. And I just love that. And I think I very much feel that myself, and it's got my wheels turning on things that I want to do and ways I want to give back, and just need to find the time to layer that on. You won't catch me on a bike, let me tell you that right now. I have a weak ass and I don't like to sit on those seats. I can get about 30 seconds of riding in and I'm sore. So I'm more of a runner. Maybe we'll do some sort of running stint to raise some money for a cause that we see fit. But yeah, so like I said, try and keep this intro a little shorter this time, and I think that all works because this episode speaks for itself, and it was one I'm really proud of. Like I said, go check out the first episode I did with Shaun. Go check out Shaun Newman's podcast, some of my favorite episodes. He had Ron McLean on a couple times, actually. I haven't even listened to the newest one. He's had Ken Rutherford on, who I just had on a couple weeks ago that you guys would have heard. That one's really good. Tanner Bozer, if you're an MMA fan, that was good. Andrew Mavridis, who I also had on, that was a great episode. And then he does this thing called the Archive series. I think that's what it's called. I probably should have double checked that before I started this recording. But he has on these older people from around the Lloydminster area, right? 90 years old, 80 years old, and just kind of gets their story. And it's fascinating to me. And it's something that, I would like to do. And so many of the things we discussed in this podcast, kind of both of our dreams of where we want to take our podcast and just kind of letting those bump up against each other and seeing the same ideas we've had. It was cool, right? Like, I don't want to ruin it. There's so many things I want to talk to you about, but I know you'll hear about in the podcast. There's a couple cool ideas that I'm definitely going to try and pursue in the future. And it was interesting to see that he had also thought about the same things. And it's cool just how our journeys are so similar, but so different at the same time. And just to be able to reflect on that, it was a really fun experience for myself. And I hope to have Shaun on many times in the future and really follow his path, because I believe in what he's doing. And I think he's really great at it. And I think he's doing it for the right reasons. And that means so much to the success of anything. And I think I just can't wait to see what he does and what he's got to show us in the future. So please go check him out. Check out Bite for Breakfast. If you could do those things I always ask for, following the social media, sharing a post, telling somebody about one of these podcasts. If you hear one that a friend would like, just giving them the heads up, hey, you should check this out. That really means a lot to me. Word of mouth is really how these podcasts spread. And yeah. Other than that, I hope you guys are doing well. I know times are a little tough. I've got lots going on in my life right now, and I think I'm going to have to do a solo episode here soon to just get it all down for you. I had some crazy times at work, some crazy times personally, and then we also got a puppy who is just an absolute menace, but the cutest thing of all time, and is taking up all of our time lately. And yeah, we can't take our eye off her for 2 seconds or she's into something bad, because she's just full of badness, but so cute we can't even get mad at her for it. So that's my life in a nutshell right now, and hopefully I'll be able to expand on that in a solo episode here soon and get into you guys' ears. But until then, keep your chin up. Things are getting warmer out. I know it's been raining the last couple of days, but yeah, no, things are getting better. Everybody enjoy this episode. I think there's a lot to learn. Bye. All right. Well, thanks for coming out here, Shaun. Been having an absolute ball out here in Lloydminster recording episodes with... I don't know what's in the water up here. There's a lot of good conversators up in this neck of the woods, hey?
Well, this is very true. You've been in Lloyd for what, a day and a half, and you already have a nicer studio than me. So,
hey, well, I'm just lucky to be able to have good friends like the Hancocks that take care of me like royalty. Like I said, when I roll up, it's just red carpet. What do you need? Here's a full selection of drinks, charcuterie board. That's why I love coming up here. I knew I was gonna have the plan to go do a bunch of these little escapades out to towns around Alberta and record some episodes, and I had to think of which are the first couple ones, and I knew I'd have everything I needed to make myself comfortable in the first one. As I'm figuring out, like I was just telling you, didn't know how to work the boards or how to set up these microphones for the first time, so it was a lot of errors. Hey, do you got this? Can I get this? Right? And they're just so good to me all the time, and they're just like my second parents. They just it's awesome.
It's I didn't even think about it. When was I on your podcast? How long ago was that?
You were episode 26, I believe, because I just re-listened to it, which is tough for me because I hate listening to myself. But so that would have been 26 episodes. I've probably been a couple months in. I think it would have been September, October, maybe.
Okay.
So like the winter's gone by.
A little while.
Yeah, you've done some really big things since then. And the podcast for me has gotten a long point since then. And
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it felt like re-listened to that one. It was funny to listen to because at that point I was still so green in this and so trying to find my footing. I could just tell I was just grasping to get those little pieces of knowledge from you, right? Which is important too. And you need to find those mentors and those people that are a little bit further along the track than you when you see that they're doing things how you'd like to see them done. But almost not even like a desperation, but just you could tell I was really looking up to you in that one. And now I feel like we're a little closer on par. You're still quite a bit ahead of me, but I feel like I've caught up a little bit now.
You keep putting me on a pedestal and I'm not there. We're just two guys that have mics in front of us and it's just getting comfortable. Obviously, you can see it already in yourself, right? Just a little more comfortable with it. That's all it is. I don't know. You can put me up wherever you want to put me, but I ain't there, man.
Right,
I'm just another dude sitting and talking to people and having a good time.
Well, I think maybe I can, over this conversation we have, maybe break down why I put you up there and what I respect about you that makes me think so highly. Because I think what is the first time when I had you on, I think it was kind of seeing, the downloads, the guests that you're getting. That's what was interesting me because I didn't have all that much time to really listen. I listened to as many episodes as I could before we were scheduled to record. And I probably, 5-6 episodes. I really liked them, the Tanner Bozers and those ones. But then it was the ones with Kenny Rutherford and a couple of the other guys. Some of the ones.
Benacquay was one that you really
Benacquay. I really liked that one. And to hear your, I don't know what to call it, not philosophy, but just idea of how you're going about the podcast and what it means to you and how close that resonates with what I'm trying to do with it. It's just, I feel like I respect that so much. And that's what I look for in people is that aren't in this for money, aren't in this for fame, are in this because they truly love it and they want to be able to explore their passions or curiosities in whatever way they can, right? And it's building up that access. And that's what it means more to a guy like us than any of the money or any of that fame, right? To be able to ask somebody to come on and have them say yes. That's all we're looking for, really. Because we just didn't get so much enjoyment. And I don't want to put words in your mouth in case I'm going sideways on what you think, but I got to hear you talk about that. And I feel like when I hear somebody else that is following a value like that, it just gets me excited because you don't see that very much. It seems like so many people are chasing money and these things or they're not even aware of what they're chasing. And it's nice to see somebody that has their priorities straight in that. And I feel like that is so much more powerful than anything else. And that's a marker of what's going to be successful. Cause like I said, I listen to way too many podcasts. Like I'm absolutely obsessed. Yeah. And absolutely obsessed. And you get to see
what speed are you listening to on now?
Usually about 2.5 if I can. Sometimes if it's a science podcast, you got to crank it back down to 2. But if it's a comedy podcast, I'm going straight at 3. Especially if I can watch a podcast on YouTube or something, it's 3 speed all day. I love it.
Like, think about that.
Yeah.
Like, that's when you know you have a problem.
That is exactly,
way, right?
exactly.
Like, to listen, there's very few podcasts I can listen to at regular speed anymore. Mm-hmm. Only if they're talking about something I truly need to wrap my brain around.
Right.
It needs to be slow and methodical. Mm-hmm. Most times you just want to hear them talk and you want it to speed up and you're like, why are they talking so slow? And but the wife thinks I'm nuts. Like, I'll be doing the dishes and I never thought I'd do the dishes and listen to a podcast, but I'll be doing that. She'd be like, how can you listen to what they're saying? I'm like, it's just like, it's there. And I just need to pick up what they're talking about and it's fine. She's like, okay. Yeah.
And it's a skill. That's what so many people don't realize is they think that you just picked it up one day, cranked it up to 3 times speed and that's what you're listening at. It's like, no, you start, 1.5 and that's crazy at the start, right? Like it's even to me when I first did it, it was like, some podcasts I just do 1.25 and that and 1.5.
It's all in how a person talks, right? Like when you listen to me, I'm not a guy, like I can be a really fast talker.
Yeah.
But most of the time I kind of got a slow cadence to me.
Yeah.
And so when you speed it up, it actually sounds better. Jordan Peterson sounds better a little quicker.
Yeah.
Unless he's talking about something really in depth that you need to actually be like, okay, I gotta listen to every word he just said.
Yeah.
And most people are like that, like Jocko Willnick.
Yeah.
Like you speed him up, he just acts like it just sounds like he's talking normal.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? So it helps a lot of people. I listen to a lot of audiobooks that are so much better sped up.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, like 13 hours later, you got this guy just talking slowly and it's like, oh man, just speed it up. But I agree with you. It's a learned skill.
Yeah. And for me, a big part of it is the efficiency of it, to know that I'm taking in information in a faster way than I could have before, right? And that always gets me excited. I always want to find ways that I can do things faster and more efficiently. That is how I structure so many things in my life. And I'm finding with the podcast and being more open about some of those things it's making me think about why I'm that way a lot more. And it's interesting, just some of the things I'm finding, some of the oddities that I just never thought about, never put any thought towards, of how weird I am in a way in some of the things I do. And it's been interesting. And I really enjoy it. It's just, I feel like for some reason of being on the podcast, I have to hold myself to a different standard in some way. And I don't want to just write off anything and not look into it.
What do you mean you got to hold yourself? You mean like as you're diving into guests and their stories and things, you got to look inner at yourself? Is that what you mean?
A little bit. It's more so, we talked about this on the first podcast, is in my view of what I think makes a podcast special is how honest and genuine that person can be. And then from there, how vulnerable you can be and how open with yourself you can be, right? And I think there's a certain level where I came into the podcast knowing that and started off almost from episode 1 being extremely open, extremely honest. I've said things on this podcast I've never said to anybody in the world. And that's one thing. But you can only take it so far because you only know yourself so well. And there's times where on the podcast I've gone back and listened to, and I'm not trying to mislead the audience or mislead what I'm saying. I just don't know enough about myself. So I'm always trying to think about where these things come from myself and understanding myself better so that I can be more honest and more vulnerable and talk about that. I feel like there's so much value to doing that and to figuring out who you are and where these things come from. And like, I have a really bad temper, and in sitting and trying to figure out where that comes from, I feel like there's a lot of benefit for people to hear that maybe don't ever do that. Don't ever ask themselves questions about where these things come from. And I feel like I've gotten so much value from doing that in my own life. If I can, through the podcast, show people a template for how to do that for themselves, it's very important. So I find myself doing it more and more. And then I see the rewards I get out of it and how much better it makes me a better podcaster. It makes me a better boyfriend. It makes me a better communicator at work in all these ways when I do this. So then it almost becomes addicting. You're always trying to, psychoanalyze yourself and get better in all these ways. And it just, it's almost like a feedback loop. It just keeps wrapping up. So I keep doing it more and more. And I really enjoy it. It's an added gift to this podcast that already gives me so much. Is just now I'm finding almost every couple podcasts, I'm finding some new way that it brings me happiness and brings me something positive, which is really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess most people, want things fast. Mm-hmm. We want to be fast. We want to get efficient. We want to, mm-hmm. But the problem is if you never stop to sit down and think about some things, even when it comes to interviews, right? I can find myself at one point I was doing, releasing 5 episodes every 2 weeks, wow. Right? But it kind of almost got to where you were just like putting them out instead of like actually thinking deeply about a guest and what you really wanted to pull out of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And when it comes to yourself, you can be the same way, right? Like, in saying that, I do my best thinking while talking. You mentioned Ken Rutherford, like really good friends with Ken. Mm-hmm. We probably, I don't know, we have lots of conversations where we're trying to discover something and we can't discover it without talking it through, right?
Exactly.
And so that's the best form of learning. That's why the podcast, I enjoy it so much. Mm-hmm. Probably why you enjoy it so much, right? Because you get to, to listen to something is one thing, and to like pick up ideas that way is like, it's like really enjoyable, right? Oh, I would have never ever thought of that. But to like sit and like talk something through, there's something like the experience of that, of like working at it and then stumbling upon an answer and going, geez, and then having to think about that, it is like almost taking that a step further.
For sure. And it, I love what you said there. And I find that before I started this podcast and I was listening to so many podcasts, I would be very jealous. And I feel like the whole time I'm listening to the podcast, you feel like you're in that room. And you just want to say your piece and you want to be a part of that conversation, right? You want to be not just
you're the guy yelling at the radio.
Exactly. I'm the guy yelling at the radio. Exactly. That's exactly what it was. And after a while, if you listen to a guy for enough times, you start to feel like you know them. And you start to feel like, exactly like you said, somebody said this, so I'm stealing it, but they say like everybody's mind is a sword and a whetstone, right? When you're giving your ideas out, it's the sword, right? And when somebody's receiving it and bouncing those ideas back, it's the whetstone. So somebody's the sharpness of your mind, like you need somebody with a really sharp sword or sharp whatever to hone your own ideas, right? And everybody's a little bit different. I found the same thing. And when I would listen to Kenny on the on the podcast, on his podcast, when he'd be a guest on yours, I just thought, what an interesting guy. That brain works in a very unique way, and you start to see kind of how it works. And you don't want to ever assume you know who they are without having a conversation with them, but you kind of have a feeling. And I had a feeling that if I was to sit down with Ken, we would get along really well, and there would be some really interesting conversation. And in having him over yesterday, that was exactly what you found. And I found that was such a cool experience because I felt that way with so many of these guys, all these podcasting heroes I have. A lot of the draw I had to start a podcast was to eventually get to the point where I could have those conversations with them because I feel like I know them so well. But you never know, right? You could listen to all these hours of Joe Rogan, then you meet him and he could be completely different. I don't think that.
I don't think that.
I don't think so. But you wouldn't know.
I think we both know to do a podcast, even if you don't think you're starting to show people a part of yourself, when you talk for hours upon hours upon, you can't hide that anymore. Mm-hmm. It's man, you could try and hide if you want. Yeah. You're not going to hide for very long, right? Like people by now know exactly who I am, I think, right? Like, I think it's funny. Sometimes I wonder if by listening to me, they start to know me a little better than I know myself because I don't put that much thought into thinking, I say what's on my mind for the most part. Yeah. And I don't think you can hide from it. Like, I said this to Ken the other day. When I come on this thing, I'm pointing at the mic, I don't become a different person. Mm-hmm. This is who I walk around being. Yeah. And so I don't have the alter ego of like, hey, this is Shaun's in the CW whatever 22 FM and welcome to The Rock. Hey, and we're gonna have some fun today. It's like, no, this is who I am. And actually, one of the first questions I asked to a bunch of people was, do I have a radio voice or don't I? Because if I don't, just tell me now and I will bow out and I'll be done. Because I've listened to a lot of podcasts where you're just like, I don't mind what they're talking about, but the guy's voice is driving me nuts. And how long do you listen to those podcasts? You're lucky if you get an episode or two. It doesn't matter how good it is. Right. Because you have to have the right voice where it's like, I can handle that. Yeah. And so, I don't know. I guess I never even thought about it. For me, I'm just so stuck on the ideas. And that's why so many people have asked me about all these different things of, why are you doing 3 hours? You get way more downloads if you cut it down. Just do an hour, right? Why do you leave it rough? Why do you leave a certain thing in? Why don't you make it really, cut out all the ums and the ahs and stuff? And it's like, for me, that is so not what I listen to podcasts for, and it's so not what makes it interesting to me. I would take the roughest garbage audio, bad voice, if it's good ideas and good conversation. So your audience can't see me shaking my head along with you, right? Because listen, there's a reason why me and you get along, I think. Mm-hmm. It's because we have the same idea when it comes to a podcast, which is like if you're going in for a murder mystery show, you want the feel of like the sound effects and the music and the deep voice, and you don't want anything to take you out of the experience. When you're coming in to listen to my podcast, your podcast, a lot of different podcasts, long-winded conversations, I don't want any interruptions. I certainly as hell do never want you to cut off somebody and think I wouldn't find what they're about to say interesting. There's nothing that drives me nuts more than listening to an edited podcast. I love history, so I listen to some different history podcasts, and they'll do where they start talking to an expert, right? Like we started talking into this archaeologist, and he'll be talking, and they'll cut him off, and they'll just start talking over him, with music. What he was talking about in summary was this. Yes. And you're like, well, let the fucking man talk about it. I don't want to hear you talk about it. I want to hear him talk about it, right? So that really turns me off a lot of those podcasts and brings me back to ones like yourself, mine, obviously Joe Rogan, Lex Friedman. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot. Yeah. And it's because listen, if you buy the best audio equipment possible, put yourself, in a soundproof room where you just can't have a whole bunch of noise. That's beautiful to the ears too. Yeah. And if you're into that type of thing, that's what you're after. You're not after the ums and the ahs and whatever. I mean, if you get a good guest, they're going to cut that on themselves anyways, right? It's when you get you've felt this, when you get somebody who's a rookie in, who's just a little bit timid at the mic. Yeah. You're like, it's okay, just relax. And it takes 20 minutes, and then they start and then they just kind of settle in and they're fine because all it is a conversation. Yeah. But in the beginning, there's going to be a few ums and ahs and whatever. And it's like, oh, well, that's part of the experience. That's part of getting to know this guest. And if you're an audience that follows along, that's what you want.
Yeah. And people that listen to more than 1 or 2 episodes, they'll start to see that pattern of, oh, everybody's coming in a little bit nervous at the start. And what I notice is the speed at which they settle in and those nerves kind of go away is very much dependent on my demeanor and how I'm coming in. If I'm coming in and the board's not working and the mics and I'm just fiddling and I'm sweating and I come in unsettled, it takes much longer for the guest. If I come in like I am today with you, where I'm comfortable sitting down, the guest will settle in. Sometimes it's 5 minutes. Sometimes it's 10, right? Sometimes the guy just needs his 20 minutes, and that's usually around the mark. I was going to throw that number out as well. But I find it's so much to do with your energy as well that settles them into you. You hear comedians talk about the experience of being on stage and how it's almost a hypnosis, and you're taking them and just getting them into the same like mind meld as you and putting them into the same mind frame. I feel like the same with podcasts, right? You just have to bring them into that. We're about to have a conversation. It's going to be fun. It's going to be loose, and it's going to go wherever it needs to go mindset. And you can almost lock them into that. And I find the more I do this and the more comfortable I get with it, the more the guests come in and can slip into that quicker and quicker.
Yeah. Well, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it does.
Like just trying to think of an instance, but we all have somebody that, just makes you feel comfortable. Like they always know what's going on, right?
Yeah.
And they never get their tail feathers ruffled. For some reason, my dad comes to mind, right?
Mine as well.
Right? Like he just, no matter the situation, he just seems unfazed by it.
Mm-hmm.
And that like bleeds off or like influences how everybody around him feels, right?
Yeah.
That's what strong leadership does. Why in this country right now are we all going like a little bit bananas? Well, look at what we got at the top. And it doesn't matter if you love Trudeau or not. It just means he's not a great leader.
Yeah.
I could care less what he's doing. He's just, you don't look at him and go, wow, that's our leader.
Yeah.
And I know there's a lot of people out there that don't love Barack Obama, but that was a guy when he spoke, you listened, and he had this like ability to talk and present himself that just made you go, this guy's got it under control. Maybe he didn't. Maybe he did. It doesn't matter.
Right.
But the difference is like so obvious.
Yeah.
And that's leadership. And what you're talking about is just a simple form of that where
Exactly.
like if you come in and nothing phases you, pretty soon people are going to, oh, okay, all right, here we go. And you're right. They can settle in a lot quicker.
Right. And I'm curious to ask you, since you mentioned that your dad had a lot of that, and same with mine, very much is emotionally stable at all times. Like even if shit is going to hell in a handbasket all around, he is that calm, focused person that's going to make things happen and just never loses his shit. Never see him too off the handle. And that was something that growing up, it was hard to hold up to that, because as I'm a very emotional guy. Must have a lot more of my mom in me than him. And people would be maybe surprised by that, because they always say we look identical and sound identical. But I think I struggled with that a bit because I had all those other sides, and to him, sometimes he didn't understand that. And there was times where we're such similar people, but then we'd butt heads in this one area because he just couldn't get why I couldn't just get over these things or just turn that off, right? Like in a work aspect, like why are you letting these people affect you? Like this person is, in the grand scheme of your life, is so nothing to you. Why are you letting them hurt your feelings? And I'm saying, I intellectually understand that this person had a bad life and is just angry at probably some things at home and is taking it out on me, and I'm an easy target, and I know it shouldn't affect me, but it still does, because I have this thing in my head where I want everyone to like me. And I found that time after time, there was a lot of the times where me and my dad would butt heads was that exact thing where that calmness, that demeanor, not being able to break through that. And I'm just curious, I'm just kind of saying that on my own side, but I'm curious, I found that lots of people that had fathers like that kind of experienced that to some degree or another. I'm just curious maybe if you had.
I'm definitely governed by my emotions for sure.
Yeah.
I never struggle. I was always impressed by Dad's ability that, over, I don't know, I'm turned 35 in less than a month, and in 35 years, like I can remember Dad getting like upset, like 2 times maybe.
Yeah.
Like one really sticks out in my mind.
Yeah.
And I don't know, as I get older and I have kids of my own and I have experience of my own, I think for me, like I just start to understand that he went through a lot. And by going through a lot, you start to understand little things are just going to slide away and it's okay. And it's almost like mental training for your brain. But that's like easy to say. You got to go through the shit. Like to give you a picture, when I was like 8 or 9 years old, we almost lost a farm. The 90s were really bad for droughts, and I can't remember specifics because I was a kid, but regardless, Dad had to go long haul trucking across Canada to pay the bills, right? And I always ask him, like, I hear the stories of truck drivers and taking pills and drugs, and so, you know, as I get older, I said, Dad, you must have taken something. Like, how did you stay awake for 18 hours day after day? You know, we complain about an 8-hour day, a 10-hour day. Here's this guy, and he said, you know, the creditors were calling me so much, it was all I needed. And so he said, I didn't need anything. I was so pissed off 99% of the time across Canada there and back because they wouldn't stop calling me and wanted money and wouldn't leave them alone. And you're like, see, I've never been there. Yeah. I've never been to that dark place. I hope to never go there. But you come out of that dark place, you're going to be changed. Like, you just, there's no way to like unsee that. Yeah. And then once you've come out of it, it's like, you know,
everything else doesn't seem so bad.
It doesn't seem so bad.
Right.
And the thing is when you start putting in, that's like on that extreme, right? We'll just talk about podcasting for a second, right? Like, you know that the fun part is this, right? And then you gotta worry about everything after and the hours of work that go into
finding guests and
and putting it out and you know, you can say there's no editing or very little, and listeners can think that there's still editing, there's still
recording
upload time and everything
and
oh man, and cutting clips, and it just never ends. And so like the ability to do that, and once you get through that, and I mean, what are you on now? 60?
I think I have 61 released on Friday. Okay,
so you got 61. Like, that's a huge accomplishment. Yeah. So kudos to you.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
And what it tells me is like, oh yeah, you're going to have no problem doing this for as long as you want to do it. As long as you want to do it, it's there for the taking, right?
Right. Yeah.
And that's something you have over a lot of people because they have no idea.
Yeah.
Like, no clue. But maybe they've done it in a different way. Like, I'm not knocking on a bunch of people, but I just like to have the fortitude to push through. I think, you know, when I started, and maybe it's changed a little bit, but when I started with 7 episodes was the average length of a podcast. Like, most people didn't make it past 7, or a podcast was designed for, you know, a mini series or whatever. So the fact you're at 60, well, you're doing better than like 50% or more of podcasters.
Or else you see the ones that even hit 30 or 40, they're 20 minutes long. You know what I mean? Like, I had one guy that said, oh, I'm starting a podcast, and I got so excited. Hey, can I help you? Because I love when I hear somebody say that to me. I want to help in any way I can. I had nobody to help me figure out this stuff, and I wish I would have had someone that could have stepped in and just showed me, hey, this is what a hosting service is. This is the types of mics you'll need. This is this and that. And I was so excited. And then he said, yeah, no, I already got the first season recorded. You already have the first season. I said, first of all, what's a season? Like, what is your podcast? Like, what's going on? Second of all, like, how did you do that? Like, we just started talking about it. Yeah, no, I did it. But the episodes were 5 minutes long, 10 minutes long. He just went on a weekend and recorded all these different things and all these different topics, and then slowly released them over months. And it was like, okay, that's one way to do it, right? But to me, I don't even want to call that a podcast. Like that, you know, in the same way, well, no, that's not the right example. I was going to say that the same way that Dan Carlin doesn't think he's an historian. You almost need a different name for it. Like, what he does needs its own name because it's its own thing.
You're tickling my fancy. Dan Carlin.
Man,
I fucking love to sit with that guy. That guy's a legend.
Yeah, we were just talking about it with Tanner and Ken yesterday, or talking about him. Sorry, yeah, and just what effect he's had on me. And it's so funny to think of all these ideas I had, especially sitting down with Tanner specifically and talking about what's coming. And Tanner's very worried about society breaking down and how weak we've become and all these things. And he's pointing back to times in history, right, when these things are happening. And I found that since I started listening to Dan Carlin and was bumped up on my history, and not just, oh, I know what happened in World War I, I know the countries that fought, and I know who won. No, you know the intimate details, why it was started, the politics behind it, and how much that mirrors what we're seeing today. And it gives you such a better understanding of all that, where, you know, I listen to most podcasts just for entertainment value, but something like Dan Carlin, it has an entertainment value in spades. You will never be more entertained than when you're listening to Countdown to Armageddon by Dan Carlin, right? That series he did on World War I. There's no more entertaining shit on the market for my money.
If that would be put into a history class in school, you
100%.
wouldn't have,
yeah.
I mean, you're still going to have your 1 or 2 or 3 kids who fall asleep. They're going to fall asleep and everything. But
Exactly.
But for a man to sit and talk for, what is that, like 20, 24 hours straight? I mean, broken up into its episodes. And for it to still be engaging by the end, that's saying something.
Mm-hmm. And then, so you have the entertainment factor, but then also everything that is done from my understanding of what happened, as what's happening today, my ability to catch references, to understand patterns and sequences it's given me so much more than just that entertainment value when you want to talk Dan Carlin. And I could point that out in different ways with so many of these podcasts where I won't listen to a podcast that doesn't entertain me. That's got to be the main thing, right? And you need to have some entertainment. If it's not interesting, if it doesn't grab people, there's nothing that's going to hold them there, no matter how much you learn, right? That's just like class. It goes back to, you know, junior high, high school. If it's not entertaining, it's not going to hold you. But then to be able to give people something that they can take that's further than that, sometimes it's, you know, history and interest. Sometimes it's spirituality. Sometimes it's just that humor. Like, I feel like every podcast I listen to in all these wide genres that I do all give me something. They're all entertaining, but each one gives me something little different. And I don't know what my thing is. And I don't think you could try and, I don't think any of the ones, the thing I get out of that, I don't think they're trying to give you that. Well, maybe Dan Carlin's trying to give you some of those things, but I don't think that's what he set out to do. And I feel like you just got to set out to chase your own thing. And if you're going to be successful, you better hope you're going to find that one thing that gives to people. And it's probably going to be different things for different people now that I think about it, because not every person's going to get the same extra little bit out of the same podcast, because everybody's different. Everybody has different experiences.
After 60 episodes, do you know what you're chasing?
To be able to do this and continue to do this, right? I feel like after episode 1, you mentioned like, oh, you did 60 episodes. Now you know you can do this for as long as you want to do this. I knew it after episode 1. I knew it before episode 1. I knew for years that I was going to eventually start a podcast and make that my life and make that what I chase for the rest of my life. I was just had this idea in my head that you couldn't just start. You need to have something. You need to be a comedian, or you need to be famous in some other way.
I tell you what, if you're a comedian or you're famous or something like that, it'd make it a hell of a lot easier, wouldn't it?
For sure. For sure.
Right? Like if our names were, God, who did I just see who started a podcast? Fucking Barack Obama and Bruce Springsteen. I went, you got to be shitting me, right?
Yeah.
Like, am I happy about it? Yeah, sure. I actually should listen to it because I bet it's awesome, right?
Yeah.
I actually guarantee it's awesome. But I'm like, I'm hoping in 20 years, somebody's going, that Shaun Newman's still going. Man, he's been around. He's interviewed some crazy people. It's awesome, right?
Yeah.
But there's no way I can ever, like, there's so many people who could start a podcast tomorrow and be so far ahead of me that you can't even let it bother you, because it's just like, do you enjoy doing it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
Exactly.
The question is, do you know where you're heading? You say, you know, you love doing it and you just want to keep doing it. I just meant that as, you know, like when I first started out, I wrote a list of, I want to say 30 people-ish, Nick, something like that.
Yeah.
And I think I've interviewed all of them, or damn close to all of them now. And it was just like, I got this rough idea. I know there's some interesting people around Lloyd. I just want to try and interview them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mainly sports. I'm not going to lie. It was mainly sports.
Yeah.
And as I got going into it, I was like, I just want to interview whoever the hell I want to interview.
Yeah, exactly.
And I know that's not the recipe for success, right?
Mm-hmm.
I interviewed Kim McConnell this morning. Interesting as hell. He founded Ag Farm, which is this huge marketing firm for, you know, agriculture and whatever. Retired now. He's like 60, he turned 65. He has so much wisdom in it that I was just kind of like, oh my God. Mm-hmm. And if I go back to the start, if I stayed in my lane, you know, kind of stay in your lane. You're a hockey guy. Stay in your lane. I mean, I've got everybody knows, like I've had relatively good success there. But the relatively good success hasn't, I hate to use this stupid term because it really drives me nuts, but doesn't really fill my cup, so to speak.
Yeah.
Whereas when I interview Kim McConnell, who nobody knows who he is, right? Even though he's got the Order of Canada, Entrepreneur of the Year for Canada, Mentor of the Year for young entrepreneurs, like all these awards, all these crazy stuff. Like what he talks about is just like brilliant. I'm like, yeah, see, that's what I'm like. Don't get me wrong. I want Wayne Gretzky. I do.
Yeah.
I want Bobby Orr. I want Brett Hull. I want all these guys. But I don't want to just be told I can only do that. Like that's not fun in my life.
Right.
So I'm still trying to, the reason I asked the question, I'll bring it all back. I'm at episode 166 on Monday. And I'm still trying to define where I'm going.
Yes.
Because I'm just enjoying the ride so much. And, like if tomorrow you said I could interview, I don't know, what's completely left field. I don't even know. Somebody on the other side of the world that plays
harmonica.
Right. Why not?
Yeah.
I bet you they got a great story. I bet you they could tell you something and you could take their lessons and apply it to your own life.
Yeah.
Right. And just pull that. That's what it's all about. To me, that's all it's all about. I don't know.
Yeah. And in hearing you give me a little bit more to that question to kind of answer my own, to define where you're going. I feel like that's the biggest thing. Everybody will ask, like, what is your podcast about? Or what do you want to do with it? And I know that in my head, but it's such this ephemeral thing that I can't ever explain to anybody else.
So what do you, well, try and answer it then for me. Like, right? Because what we share is we didn't, I always joke, in the beginning, I should have called mine Grassroots Hockey, right?
Right.
If I would have had a hockey podcast, Grassroots Hockey, right?
Yeah.
Talking about the kids from ground up and whatever. And everybody would understand grassroots hockey. Oh, it's a hockey podcast, whatever, right?
Yeah.
Instead, I called it my name because when you call it my name, now it's on me and I can take that damn thing wherever I want.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about it.
Yeah.
You've got the same thing.
And I love that freedom and I love that I can take it wherever I want. But there is some sort of common thread that I want to do with all those people, right? I want to have hockey players and YouTubers and scientists and all these.
So what's the common thread then?
I can't find the words to articulate it. It's deep. It's chasing something like chasing knowledge, chasing personal development, some idea. Maybe this is what I can say. And I don't know if you'll understand this or not, but I feel like I'm trying to build upon what I've seen other people do, what I've seen Joe Rogan do, and what I think. So now maybe this is the way I can go about this. If I had to ask you the same question you just asked me about what that common thread is with mine, what would you say that is for Joe Rogan?
I always say Joe Rogan has 3 branches.
Okay.
It's way I've tried to do mine, and I'm definitely not perfect at it. He's a comedian.
Right.
That's his day job. He's a comedian. He has his MMA because he's into the UFC.
Yeah.
So 1, 2, and his third one is Joe Rogan, and that's what you're getting, which is his interesting fucking people.
Yeah.
Right? So you got anything from aliens to, be a better human being, David Goggins and Jordan Peterson and all these interesting people and that's to me. So for me, I try and do the same thing. I got hockey or sports, I call it. I got history, which is my archive episodes, which I love hearing the old stories and trying to pull some of their knowledge. And then I try and do my own version of interesting fucking people. And if I could have Goggins and
Jordan Peterson,
yeah, I would tomorrow. Like it wouldn't even be a question. But I'm not Joe Rogan. So but for me, the common thread across all 3 is, I think where I'm at is, I'm like searching for, at the beginning I called them truths. Like, what's a truth to you?
Yeah.
Like what is one of the things you can hang your hat on at the end of the night?
Right.
It doesn't mean God. I just mean like, for me, if I get up in the morning and I lift weights, my muscles grow bigger. That's a truth. I'm I'm just being a little bit of a smart ass, right? Like that's the truth. Okay, well, fair enough, and that's worked well for you. And so if you look at my line of work up to this point, I feel like I'm always searching for what are some underlying truths to the human experience, to life on this place,
right.
Whether you're a hockey player, whether you're UFC, whether you're a baseball player, etc. And one of the things I think I can lay my hat on now, like I'm like 99% positive, is belief in somebody, like believing they can do something, is so powerful you have no idea. Like, because I felt it in my own life, and I've seen so many hockey players and baseball players just to have one coach believe in them, and all of a sudden they're off to the races.
Yeah.
Wow, isn't that powerful? And to me, that's more, so I get them to tell them out in a story because I want to hear the story. Everybody wants to hear a story.
Yeah.
You got to play with, I don't know, Barry Bonds. Wow, that was cool. Like, you know, to have Don Cherry on. Wow, that's cool. But the cool part for me isn't Don Cherry. It's like getting Don Cherry to talk about his lowest point, which all you got to do is go see the movie and you can see. But to hear him talk about it and to see how low he was and realize, oh, we all get low at times, whether you're Don Cherry or whether you're Nick, whether you're Shaun.
So then, I really love how you answer that question. I feel like you helped me answer that question for myself with your answer. And just to put it back, to reframe that question in the way that you answered it for Joe Rogan for myself, is I see those lanes for myself too. I've already gotten a little bit down a couple of them. There's still a few more I haven't been able to get my foot in the door with.
UFC?
So, UFC is a big one. Yeah. Like having Andrew, that was one of the most amazing conversations I've had with Andrew, just because I've been so itchy. I love these conversations and I love everyone that I've had, but there's certain ones I'm dying to have, right? And it wasn't, I went into that thinking I'm going to talk to Andrew about his journey as a fighter and what his struggles are going to be and all that. But we ended up just shooting the shit about how much we love MMA as a sport and the rule changes that need to happen and how the fighters need to be paid different and just all these amazing fights we've seen in these up and comers and all this. And it was so much fun. Right. And that is one of those avenues I want to go down, right? Like if I had the opportunity to tomorrow where the UFC called me and said, hey, do you want to come be, you know, the UFC fight week podcaster where you just come to every fight week, and if fighters want to, you can do a podcast with them over and over. I would do that in a heartbeat. I would still do my VonDubCast, and I would just start a new podcast for that.
Whoa. I put it to you, a question for you. Yeah. If they offered that but said you couldn't do the VonDub, would that be a deal breaker?
Yes. If I had to just pigeonhole myself, if I couldn't, you know, interview my favorite fiction authors and my favorite, you know, YouTube stars and video game streamers and all that stuff, yeah, I couldn't do it. Even though. And it's something to do with my principles and what I think. I feel
can I just say I find that really fucking cool.
Yeah, and
because I just what that answer is my answer, because I'm like, well, no, because no.
And to me, and but I think a piece of my answer too is that in my head, I know deep down, one of those truths to me is that one day I will have access to any UFC fighter I want. I believe that very truly. And that might be 40 years from now, or it might be 5 years from now. It all depends on how much I want to hustle and grind and a little bit of luck. You can never discount luck. I feel like people that...
And I fucking hate the luck part.
Yeah, I hate it, but you can't discount it altogether, right? It's all 99% hustle, 1% luck.
So is that luck, or is that the universe?
Whatever you want to define it as, right? This is one thing that I feel like has come up time and time again on my podcast, is that language is poor. Ideas are great. Language is poor. So there's so many times you can find the same word or all these different words, or sometimes there's not even a word to explain it. It's the ideas, right? And that's kind of what I see that. It doesn't matter. Earlier you were talking about filling your cup and or what you believe in, the truths, and you said, like, I don't want to call it God, but to say, like, to get hung up on what the word is, it's all about the idea and what you're trying to convey. It's all about intent. And that's what I love about podcasts, because I feel like so much of this is just trying to get tied up in words. And we're so caught up these days, just as society, with words. But words don't mean anything. It's all about intent and what you're trying to create. And when you have a long time to use as many words as you need and to say, scrap all that was wrong, this is what I'm trying to say, and to work around it and bounce off with somebody to get to that intent of what you're trying to convey and to try and get down to those truths, because that was exactly what I wanted to say, right? Like going down that's path of, I have these branches, right? MMA would be one, authors would be one, hockey players would be one for sure. YouTubers for sure would be one. And that's one I haven't yet to have anybody on in that domain. I've tried a couple, I've reached out to a few, can definitely try harder, and I will try harder in the future. But to me, that's not that common thread between those. And that's not what's holding that back. And I feel like what you're saying about finding truths is exactly what I'm after. I am after trying to find those truths and those universal truths and what those truths are to me and what my truths are, which sounds so hippy-dippy and silly, but it's not.
No, I don't think it's, I don't, when we talk about truths and beliefs and like, you're worried the audience is going to be like, these guys have been smoking the jam or something. Yeah. But it's just, in a world that pulls us away, like if you go back 100 years ago, the church was like ingrained in your community, in your society, everything. And that was all about a belief structure and like believing in something that was more powerful than you. And you think of the church, I know like now in media, like all they talk about is the pedophiles and all the corruption and the bad shit. But like, think about what the Bible and I mean, I'm speaking, Christianity, but like religion itself, the good that it teaches a community and everything to do. And we're so far removed from it now. Like, and it's just where we are as a society. But that the fact you even say truth and then got to go, they probably think we're hippy dippy. It's like, well, why? Yeah. Like all I'm looking for, and I feel like, that's where we share a common thread is we're just looking for some things. And I call it hanging my hat on something. 100 years ago, they would have went, the good book says, be good to your neighbor. Enough said, done. And we don't say that anymore. Like, I mean, we kind of do, but we kind of don't. And now you got to like kind of figure it out, but we don't call it a truth. We don't call it belief. Yeah. Nobody wants to go there. It's like, I just want to, I heard a friend of mine say the other day, well, actually this is a while back, because this is when I had Ruben Mays on, and he was the football player. Right. And he said, I just want to say that I'm a Christian and I believe. And I was like, oh, okay. I was so caught off guard. Yeah. And then my best friend goes, it's nice. Like, and this is Kobe. I didn't expect that out of him. He goes, it's nice to hear somebody say that. Yeah. That's where we've got to as society, where it's almost cool to say exactly what we're talking about. Like, just like, man, I want to believe in something. I'm trying to find that out. Yeah. And I do believe in something, but I'm not at that point where I can say it's not Christianity or this book or what it is. I believe in something. What do you believe in? It's an amalgamation of all those things. I believe in this transcendent good and whatever it is. I haven't found a word for it. None of the descriptions that I find that I feel like it's the undescribable. You can't find it. There is no word for it because it is what you could call it God if you want. You could call it faith, but not any which God. It's not the Christianity's not. It's not. Do you think there's somebody upstairs pulling the strings?
I don't know. It could be. I have no idea. Right? That could be one form of it, but I don't know. And I don't think you can know. And I feel like that's the point. And I feel like at every time you try to box it in and to label it and to find it, you're proving that you don't you're pulling yourself farther from understanding, because a key component of it is that it is ineffable. You cannot understand it. That's what it is, right?
There's nobody on this planet that can give you some insight in there?
There is. Jordan Peterson has given me amazing insight into this. Sam Harris has. Joe Rogan has. Lex Friedman has. So many of Lex Friedman's guests have given me insight into this. I feel like I'm constantly finding more insight and my ideas around it and solidifying what it is. But I feel like a key concept of that is that it is unnameable and unknowable. I feel like that is what is important, is to have something like that, because that is the ultimate humbler. To know deep down that you believe in something that can never be known always keeps you in that white belt mentality, right? That you're always learning. You're always the student. And I feel like the trap is to think you have it all figured out. And when we lost religion because religion used to serve that function, right? And I had religion as a child and I hated it. I hated the dogma. I hated when they tell me what to do. I hated that I couldn't ask questions, because if anything, I am just the questions guy. I am curious about everything. I want to know why. And then I want to know why. And then I want to, I'll go all the way down.
Why?
Yeah, exactly. Right. And I couldn't do that. So I just wrote off religion as a whole. I said, this is stupid. And the people that listen to this are stupid. And I am the logic guy. And, I live my life by logic and efficiency. And this is what I do. And I did that. And then that served me for that time. And then the last probably 5-6 years, I found, I don't know if I'm still right on that. I think there is something here. I don't think it's what I was being told it was. And then I don't think it's Buddha. I don't think it's all these things. I think it's the common threads between them all. When you take the dogma away from all these religions and just look at the core tenets, kind of like you were saying of just that, be good to your neighbor. And you look at what are the core tenets of Christianity, of Islam, of Buddhism, of all these. That is what it is. That is what it was. And when you listen to Jordan Peterson, I love his take on this. I don't know if this is right, but I feel like as of late, it is the closest I've seen that rings true to me when I hear it. And it's that what that is was at a time before we had writing, before we had all this stuff, before even when we were just figuring out language, people were telling stories. And they were telling stories about what they saw. And apologies for people listening because I just told this to Tanner and Ken yesterday, but they were just telling stories about what they could see and how the people would act around them. And they were all the stories that became the biblical stories and became those archetypes of the warrior's journey and the hero's journey that is now every movie, and it's Star Wars, and it's Iron Man, and it's everything that it is, was just us telling stories about the apes over there that were going off and doing these things and how we learn and what that is. And then we built all these things around that and mystified it, and it got over time and it got turned into this thing. And then a very natural inclination to do is to try and say, we need to figure this out, right? We can't stand having anything that's ineffable, that is unknowable. And we try and put labels on it, we try and figure it out, and then that spreads it out. And then this culture thinks they have it figured out in this book, and this culture thinks they have it figured out in this book, and this culture thinks they have it figured out in this book. But really, what it is just all of us going back to the base of who we are. And there's certain truths in that. And I think you can find some of those truths in some of those books. And I think you can find a lot of the same truths in the different books, and then some miss the mark, because that's just kind of how we evolved. But my journey, not my journey, but what I'm seeing more and more and what rings true to me is that you just need to do away with all that dogma and all the extra bells and whistles around it and take it back to the first principles and just find what the truths are there of what makes people good, what makes people bad. Because I don't think, people always say, like, are people good or are people bad, right? What is human nature? And I feel like what Jordan Peterson says is, no, everybody has good and evil in them. And you need to do everything you can to understand both those sides of yourself and not to pretend that they're not there and not to lie to yourself about them. And that is the journey. That is the goal, is just to be honest with yourself enough to figure those parts of yourself out. And then once you do, you're going to do better for those around you, and you're going to be able to help more. And you can show them the path, and you can lead by example that you're doing this, right? Like, and a big form of that is what I talked about earlier, of asking those questions about, why am I angry all the time? Why do I do this? Why do I overreact to this? Because I'm doing better work and it allows me to help people around me. And then I lead by example, and then people around me go, hey, I see what you're talking about on the podcast of doing that kind of self-work or shadow work, whatever. There's a million names for it again. Language is bad. There's a million names for all these things. It's the idea. Whatever you want to call that. I think that's important. And I feel like that is important to me. And I feel like if I can talk about that and try to articulate this, because I'm getting better at it all the time of trying to explain this to you what it is, but it's very hard to explain. And I'm using so many other people's words. I'm using Jordan Peterson. I'm using Sam Harris. I'm using all these guys that I listen to articulate what my truth is off of theirs. And I feel like just chasing that and trying to figure out what that is, that's kind of what I'm after. And I'm doing it through interviewing MMA guys and all these other guys and listening to all these things. But
you're basically, first off, I'm going to say this before I forget it again, but you apologize for copycatting Jordan Peterson and whoever else.
Right.
But imitation is the finest form of flattery, right?
Right.
I mean, if somebody started quoting Shaun Newman or, started quoting your podcast, would you be hurt by that?
No, not at all. You're right.
Oh, that'd be freaking cool. Like, I mean, that's not what I'm striving for, but at the same time, if somebody, quoted me off something I said, I'd be like, geez, I must be doing something right.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
I mean, what you're talking about is why I truly believe, you say, you truly believe that you will be able to have access to any of the UFC fighters.
Yeah.
I believe you.
Mm-hmm.
You stick with it. I believe you. And for me, I am searching for Shaun Newman, if that makes sense. And when I find that, whenever that is, Maybe I'm 3/4 way down the journey. Maybe I just started moving my feet. Who knows?
Mm-hmm.
When I find that, I think it's going to be popular. And I just think that success will follow that.
Yeah.
I don't know what that looks like, but to me, I go like, until I get to that point, what does it matter?
Right.
I'm searching for something right now. I'm like you. I can't define it exactly, but I'm searching.
Right.
And when I find it, I feel like I'm going to know. I hope I know.
Mm-hmm.
And by that time, you're going to be down the path so far that people are going to be able to follow your entire journey because it's recorded and be able to just be like, wow, that is a ride. Man.
Yeah.
Like, because you're right. You're doing it like an artist would or something, right? You can see their first painting, their second painting, their third. Now, we're a little different than an artist. I don't want to put myself to Van Gogh or anything, but you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. Where you can just like listen through it and be like, wow, like listen how he changes. Like take yourself, for example, just conversation in general is so much different than the first one.
Yeah.
I also find it very interesting. Now, it could be because I'm very good friends with Ken and pretty good friends with Tanner too, and maybe we're just all in the same circle. Mm-hmm. I just find it very intriguing how I obviously haven't listened to what you guys talked about.
Yeah.
So the fact that you have to apologize because we're talking about similar things, I find striking as like, it seems to be on everybody's mind what's going on and how we've moved so far away from religion and belief and how, we think we're so much better off for it, but there's repercussions to that. And we're starting to feel them now. Mm-hmm. And here you are, back-to-back nights having similar conversations. I can't speak to exactly the same conversation.
But very similar.
But very similar.
And I feel like, to me, that shows the importance of those conversations and what they are. And also, I just wanted to make a few comments on what you said about searching for Shaun Newman, right? And hoping that you'll know. I think that is another way to explain just what I was saying about all those things and doing that deep work and trying to figure out who I am. That is what I feel like comes through. I feel like at all times, I am being as true to Nick as I can be. When I hop on this mic, I am the truest I am at every point. I'm as honest and as vulnerable as I can be at that point. But like I said, I'm doing that work in the background to figure out who I am so that every time between one podcast and the other, I have done that work to find, it's Nick 2.0 that's coming out. I'm never the same guy that hops on this microphone. I'm always different.
You never can be, though.
Exactly. And I never would.
Just one conversation is going to change you.
Yeah.
It's going to add a new idea into you. So you will never be.
Right. But even if I didn't try to do that, it would happen, right? And you're always going to be a new person, right? You're always taking in new information. But now I'm conscious of that and I'm trying to be as different of a person every time. I want to be reading books, taking in podcasts, learning and testing my ideas against people both on and off the podcast so that I am doing that as fast a rate as I can. But what I wanted to mention is I feel like that journey of you saying you want to find what Shaun Newman, you don't know how close you are. I feel like I would argue that that is one of those journeys that you're never going to be, it's an endless goal, right? And you're always going to be chasing that. And I feel like that is what it is. But I understand what you're saying about, and I agree with you, that is what brings success is the chasing of that. And people make this mistake of chasing money, right? You talked about these celebrities that have a base already. So they start a podcast, but they are not willing to be vulnerable. They're not willing to chase. They're not trying to chase who they are, and it crashes and burns. And they don't like it. It doesn't get the response they want. The numbers drop off and they stop doing it. And it happens time and time again. Not to say there's not guys that have a huge following like Dax Shepard and right, like that had a huge following, but then was willing to be vulnerable and to chase that and to keep getting better and to keep showing up and to keep grinding. And now he did it. But it's the springboard that you have only matters. It's just like stand-up comedy when they talk about a famous person going up on stage. You get 10 minutes with those people, right? 5 minutes, some would argue. Or do they think, oh, this guy's famous, but then eventually you got to make me laugh. And same thing with podcasting. It doesn't matter how many people you're going to get to tune in for the first episode. If you don't have something there and if you're not truly trying to get better each and every time, you're not going to get there, right? And it's...
Yeah, so, this almost brings me all the way back to the pedestal thing is like, so I'm at 160 something, and, I guess if you add in archives... and all the ones I have banked from the archives, I'm probably close to 200, right? Yeah. And to me, what you're saying there is exactly right. It's like, that is a work in progress. And I think of like a guy like Dax Shepard. I gotta be honest, Dax Shepard has great guests, but I laugh about him because I'm like, when I listen to him, I think he's just shitty host. I just do. And that's just me. Maybe
I've never listened to one of his podcasts, so I can't say.
I struggle with him.
Yeah.
But his guests are like, oh my God, would I love his guests, right? And there's a guy that kept working at it though. And I assume he's better now. There's no way you can't get better by doing this more. It's like, you start lifting weights, so at the start you suck. Well, that's great. If you stick with it, you're going to get better. Mm-hmm. That's the way this works.
Yeah.
Like you're not going to start podcasting and be shitty. I mean, define shitty, but I mean, you are going, even if you're shitty, you're going to get better. Mm-hmm. And that's probably what Dax Shepard's doing, except he has the Tom Brady's and the Bill Gates. And like, I mean, just like, you're like, what? Like, what? Dax Shepard? Like, that one irritates me.
Yeah, I get you.
That was right back at the time where I'm like, when he started, you're just starting to make some inroads. Like, I don't know. I can't remember who I got at that time. What does it matter?
Right.
You get some name, you're like, all right. And then like, hey, have you heard this new Dax Shepard podcast? I'm like, the who? Like the actor guy? All right, I'll give it a listen. And I look at his first like 5 guests. Tom Brady and Bill Gates are in it. I'm like, oh man, how do you like that? That's almost self-defeating. Like, how do you compete with that?
Right.
Not that I'm even in the same realm as Dax Shepard, but it's like, that's some reach. Like, wow. Mm-hmm. And then I listened to it. I'm like, oh God, this sucks. Like, it's great guess, but he sucks.
Right. But everybody sucks at the start. That's my thought. And I feel like, again, like I said, I haven't listened to any of his podcasts, not one's earlier, not one's late. I've never listened, not one. But from what I've heard of people and the way they talk about it and the way I've never heard of him, I've never had people come to me to talk about any of those guests. I didn't know we had Bill Gates on and those types of people. What I've had people come to me and say, when he brings his wife on and they talk about their marital problems and that kind of stuff, and they are honest and vulnerable and talk about that, that's what people bring to me and show that. And that goes back to my point about the vulnerability and the genuineness and the willingness to strive to bring more of themselves out for the people, right? Like, I feel like I'm honored when somebody tells me, hey, I really enjoyed the podcast. I am so honored, but not because obviously because they enjoyed it, but just the fact that they're willing to listen and give me that time. I value that so much. And that means so much to me that I feel like that is what is so insulting when somebody doesn't do that. If I'm going to give you my time, if I'm going to invest to listen to your thing, and you're not going to invest at least your effort to bring the best version of you forward every time and to get better and to try and to show that you care about this podcast, it isn't just some money grab. Like we've seen with lots of people that have that springboard, a lot of times that happens where that becomes this is just a money grab for them. And to me, that is so important as a listener. And I feel like that comes through clear as mud. Like every time it's clear as a bell. As soon as somebody's disingenuous and doing this for the wrong reasons, I feel like you can smell it from the first time you listen to it. And maybe that's what you're smelling. Maybe that's what Dax got into this at the start. And maybe that's what you were seeing. But then I think over time, maybe he's gone to that point, because I feel like if he hadn't, he wouldn't be reaching the heights that he was after the fact, right?
Well, he's big time. Like, I mean,
he's one of the biggest ones, right? That's kind of where I threw his name out there of just somebody that had a audience before, right? Because you can't really throw Joe Rogan out there, because when he started it, his fame is the opposite. He built himself in every way of where he got to.
Well, I mean, we all remember Joe Rogan on Fear Factor.
Yeah, that's what I remember. Yeah, for sure.
He wasn't taking over the world as Mr. Fear Factor.
Right. But he was grinding as a comedian, right? And he talks about that time of probably the darkest time of his comedy career, because he wasn't putting everything in, because he was just so blasted from recording all day out in the LA sun, right? And just couldn't bring everything he could to his comedy. But when you look at Joe Rogan's story of the Fear Factor and the UFC and all these other things, and the constant throughout that all is he's chasing greatness in some area. And that is what enforces, I feel like people like me and you, where the podcast is the thing we're chasing greatness in, we've got it baked in, right? So as long as you're chasing that, you're going to get some of those positives I'm talking about from this. But then a guy like Joe Rogan, where he is chasing greatness in stand-up, that mindset that you have to be in of wanting to be the greatest of all time, right? Like, this is something I talked about before I started the podcast. I'm not sure if I brought this up on the podcast before, but Andrew Schultz is a comedian, and he talks about on his podcast about the GOAT conversation and what it means to be the GOAT. And he said, there is no animal alive, like a cheetah on the Serengeti, that doesn't think in its head, I am the fastest thing alive. I am that apex. I want to be the best. He talks about the importance of saying that. And he's talking about it with stand-up. And he's saying that currently Dave Chappelle is the GOAT, right? Pretty unanimously. People can argue some stuff, right? There's lots of ones. But if you wanted to have probably the most unanimous decision that could be argued, it'd be Dave Chappelle. He's saying, but that doesn't mean that I'm not coming for him. And I'm not saying that I want to be the GOAT. And the importance of saying I want to be the greatest and to chase that. And I feel like I felt that very deeply. And that was one of the biggest things that pushed me to start this podcast, was just, if that is your goal and that's what you want to be in, that's what I have in my head. I want to be the greatest podcaster of all time. Now I know I might not achieve that. Hey, that might happen. But if you don't have that, you will never come close. There is nobody that's going to be that. There's nobody that's a top 100 tennis player in the world that didn't think in their head that I want to be the greatest. Just to get that close to the top, you have to have that thought. And if you don't, it doesn't mean that if you have that thought and you truly believe it enough, you're going to get there. There's a whole bunch of other factors. But unless that is a key ingredient in the mix that you have to have if you want to achieve those heights.
Yeah, well, you're talking what's separate, you're talking NHL to the WHL to Junior A and down the line, right? You can play in the WHL and have that mindset, but if you don't have the talent to take the next step, you might be able to make the AHL. And if you got the talent, you might be able to get there as well, right? But to crack the best league in the entire world, not only do you have to have a mindset, the talent, you have to have a whole bunch of things that line up. And those are the players who get in, right? Every once in a while, you're going to have a one-off, but I get what you're saying.
Yeah, because if you had all the talent in the world, if you had Connor McDavid's talent, but he didn't have the mindset of wanting to be the greatest in the world,
that's right,
or the drive, he wouldn't have got there. Now that's a different argument of how much the talent can take you, how far that can take you, and each discipline is going to be different because talent has a different weight in each discipline, right? Like talent in poker is different than talent in hockey, right? Like you can be the Connor McDavid of hockey and to see you are leaps and bounds around of everybody because you don't have to. Talent plays a different role. Whereas, and maybe poker's a bad example. I was trying to find something that has some sort of element of luck into it, right? But you kind of see what I'm saying, where talent is weighted differently in each of these things, right?
Yeah. The only thing, it's funny. To say this out loud is funny. I don't know if I want to be the best podcaster in the world. I want to. Like I say this over and over and over, and to say it again, I swear to God, somebody's going, oh my God, here it comes again. But I know positivity spreads just as fast as negativity, right? Like our world is built on that, and politicians and everybody else just feeds off it, right? And for me, I just know, like, I talk about one of the things I believe that I can spread positivity. Like I can put a smile on people's faces. I can do good things. I can try and enact some good in our community. And right now, I don't know how far, my influence, if I'm realistic, is Lloydminster and a little bit of the surrounding community. Maybe a little bit farther, maybe not, maybe a little bit smaller. What does it matter? That's where I'm at. And in order to do great things, I think you have to build where that bubble grows, right? That's why Wayne Gretzky is Wayne Gretzky, right? Like he had the talent and everything else, but like his ability worldwide at one point came off his talent, obviously, but like the entire world knew who he was. You can still play in that league and have nobody know who you are. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, I want to be a damn good podcaster. Right. I want to talk to the best. I want to be able to make a phone call and be able to have whoever I want, even if it's a year away, know that I can get them on. That's what I want. But in the meantime, I want to do things that make my community better. And I've never been afraid of a little bit of hard work, getting my hands dirty, whatever you want to call it, right? And, like, it was 15 years ago. I'm going to slide into what Ken probably told you a little bit about last night. Maybe just told you nothing. I have no idea. But 15 years ago, I biked across Canada with my brother and a girl, right? And it was like one of the most empowering things I've ever done in my life.
Yeah.
To be told and to have people betting on it and telling you you're never going to make it across Canada, you fucking nuts, whatever, take bets, whatever. And we did it. And yeah, there were bad days and everything. Mm-hmm. But it taught me, you set your mind to something, you can do whatever you want. So you say you're going to interview UFC, I believe you, right? Stick with it. Keep going. Mm-hmm. I think that I'm going to spread some serious positivity in the world. I don't know how far that stretches, but one day I woke up after watching Sam Saeed, who I just had on the podcast, who's just a local guy who, off of a couple things that had happened in Lloyd, one of them being us do the live stream and Mikey Dubs run 120K and all that stuff, goes and plays in the world's longest hockey game. And this is no knock on Sam. And Sam, if you listen to this, I mean this in the best way. I love you, brother. But like he's not like in ultra marathon shape, right? Goes plays in a game, and I get talking about it, and he played 10.5 days, and just like you're like fuck, good on you, right?
Yeah, wow.
And then he talks about how he's inspired by other people. Well, I tell him, you've inspired me, because now we're gonna do this bike. We're biking to Tufnell, Saskatchewan, which is where Quick Dick is from.
Yeah. And
we're gonna bike there and back and raise a bunch of money for Lloyd and 57-kilometer radius of Lloydminster. So it's like 30-some schools. I'm married to a teacher. All I hear, not just from her, but like, are about like kids. And you can imagine all the families not working and everything right now, but not showing up with, whether it's
school supplies or food.
Yeah, food. So and school supplies, winter clothes, shit.
Yeah.
And so we're raising money for breakfast programs, right?
Beautiful. And
I'm just like, I can sit here and think about doing good, or I can let's just go do some good, right? And see what happens. So that's what we're doing. Kenny's a part of that. Ken's going to ride with me, right?
Oh, awesome.
We've got a group of 10 of us, and we're going to ride there nonstop, 48 hours, hopefully a little less, through the night. Get there, interview Quick Dick for like 45 minutes, publish it, turn around and drive and race all the way back.
Wow.
Why not?
Yeah.
It's a stupid idea. I say it all the time. It's a stupid idea. Doesn't mean it won't work. Doesn't mean it won't raise a bunch of money and do some good and get some of that going around.
Yeah. And
to me, it's like I'm starting to like look at the like I don't know what we're all waiting around for.
Yeah.
Right? Let's get in and go.
Mm-hmm. I love that.
Waste too much of our time and energy like focusing on the negative side of the world, and life's tough, or I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm going to spend so much time editing a podcast, and that's tiring. It's like, I don't know, maybe it is, but do you enjoy it? No? Well, then don't do it. No, I love it. Well, then focus on what you love and carry on with life, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yeah.
I don't know.
No. I love that. And I feel like in talking about wanting to be the best, right? And I feel like that is something, and I won't walk that back at all. I do.
No, I don't think you should.
But then just to add to it too, is I know that goal is not, to chase that is not a tight enough aim to do me good. That does not serve me right now, that goal. It serves me in a roundabout way.
It serves you a bit.
It does. Sorry. It serves me almost as like a base layer, like a base. It's like a fire. That's the embers at the bottom, right? Like that is the base of it. That's what's keeping everything going. But then the logs and the kindling and this and the dry brush that's going on is other ideas too, right? Like that deep down of wanting to be the greatest and wanting to be that is something that's in me, right? And I feel like that is something that's going to come online more and more as I get closer to it, right? I feel like that's what's going to become the draw. But right now, it's just getting better. That is my biggest draw. Doing some good.
And I wish I could have on the studio wall. Maybe I should just do it. I don't know.
I think you should.
It's like a fucking giant mountain, but this mountain that has like you already know what I'm gonna, right? Like, and it just and it just goes. And sorry for the people who are listening, can't see me. It's like you get to the top of the peak and then it drops. Yeah. And I'm sure we've all heard this analogy before, right? But that's life. Like in podcasting, I just think this is like you set your goal, you hit your goal, and when you hit there, you're gonna be like, "Well, and you've probably already done this." You're like, "Well, shit, I know I should look back and be like, wow, I've accomplished something. But now all I can see is that giant mountain peak up there that I want to get to. And when you get to that one, then you realize you can't sit there and be like, wow, I made it here. It's like, no, where I want to get to is there. And that, if you can be honest with yourself, never ends. And it should never end. Like, you always want to continue to have the next hill to climb. And that you love to think the mountain peak, you hit there and you sit on it and you're done. It's like,
it's about ascension. As long as you're keeping on moving upwards. Right? And sometimes you're going to move down, and that's part of life. But as long as you can see that
yeah, but you don't, I mean,
or maybe sometimes you're going to get knocked down on the way up. It is
a better way, but because you're gonna drop back down a little bit.
Yeah.
But if you look back over your life or your last, I don't know, year, whatever you want to, you want to stick completely podcast. If you look back over where you've come from, you're still way higher up than you were before.
Yeah.
It's just having the ability to see that and go, all right, okay, let's go again.
And sometimes that takes people around you to help you see that. I think sometimes it's hard to see that yourself, and you need people to say, hey, look at what you've done. Right. And I feel like that's something, I don't know, we seem like very similar guys. So maybe you're like me, where we don't do well with trying to appreciate what we've done. And we're so focused on that peak ahead of us. And it takes, a significant other or a relative or a close friend to say, hey, no, that is all great, but you got to take some time to smell the flowers and be happy for what you've done and what you've accomplished so far.
Oh, I got to give a shout out to my brother. Harley is my next oldest brother, and he reminds me of that a lot.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's a weird thing to have Ron McLean. He was my 100th episode. I was so pumped about it. It was like a 3-month ordeal of like lining up to the morning where I'm like, God, I just hope he shows up.
Yeah.
Right? Like, what if he ghosts me?
Yeah.
Right? Then when I've let everybody, I usually don't tell people this far, and then he comes on, and it's like this, I can't even explain the energy. And then he disappears, and it's gone. And now it's like, well, I'll just release it, because now I have to focus on where I'm going next.
Right.
I can't even enjoy Ron McLean.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's this weird, like, you just had Ron McLean.
Yeah.
Whether people like him or not, it's Ron McLean.
Yeah, no shit.
Right?
Yeah.
And it lasted 2 minutes of like, wow, I just did that too. Now I got to figure out who I'm doing next week.
Yeah.
What a weird sensation to have.
Mm-hmm. It is.
But to me, that's the mountain, right? Like, it's like, well, you're here, but now you got to keep going. And even if that takes you down to a low spot, you're further ahead because you've already ascended that part, and you got to keep going.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes those peaks are behind, right? Like, I think that was, it was another Dan Carlin episode I was listening to. And I think it was on, during World War II, the South Pacific theater, and them talking about some of the terrain that have to cross and how they would just absolutely push themselves to the breaking point to get through this absolutely horrid jungle with, booby traps and all this stuff to get to over this peak. And when they got to that peak, what did they see? A bigger one across from that. And they had to get over that one. And just the demoralization and what it took from them, just like it felt like a piece of their soul was getting taken every time they get to the top of each peak, because they'd see another one they're going to have to get over. But when you look at that, if your life depends on it, your survival, whatever it is, depends on you to get to the other side. Just because there's another peak in front of you, you would have had to climb that other one before to even get the chance to get to that one, right? That doesn't devalue that work. Just because there's another peak in front of you doesn't mean that makes that other peak behind
actually
you worthless.
Probably the peak you just climbed is going to help you ascend the next one.
It's going to make you better.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's one of those things where I feel like a lot of this, and a lot of this is cliche of like, you have to smell the roses and all this stuff. And I feel like so much of this is things that are talked about a lot, but there's a real difference between knowing that and feeling it and understanding it and enacting it and actually making it work. I know, and I've been told so many times, that you need to slow down and be happy for what you've done. And I still struggle to do it, even though that I know that I get benefits out of it when I can do that. And it makes me feel better, and it makes it all worth it a little bit more, whatever each person gets out of that. I still struggle to do it.
I don't think you have to feel guilty about that,
And I don't think I do. It's just one of those things where
I look at you and you're younger than me. You're not married. You got a girlfriend, but
yeah.
I mean, If not that marriage would change that. You have no kids.
Right.
And everyone, you're going to probably get annoyed by me saying this because it probably gets said to you enough, but like the responsibility of having kids and trying to like balance that because you're bringing these young little crazy sons of bitches into the world. If my mother listens to this, earmuffs. But like, go as hard as you can. Don't ever second guess yourself for as hard as you can. You can smell the roses at 50.
Yeah.
And in my mind, I would change nothing about my life. Not one bit. I have like the greatest wife ever. I have awesome kids, but I'm not dumb in knowing that if I'd started this at 20, I'd be 15 years ahead. Well, hell, I would have had a decade before I would have had to worry about the responsibilities of kids. And hey, teach their own. I just know in my deep down that I now have to remind myself about balance, and I got to be careful that I'm not gone all the time. You know, it tore me up. It was like probably 8 months ago, Nick. My kids were like, "Oh, hi, Dad. You go to podcast tonight?" And I was like, "Oh, no." "Oh, you go to work?" I'm like, "No. I'm gonna stay home. Is that okay?" "Oh, okay." And it was like they were already expecting me to leave.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's scary when a 3 and 4-year-old are saying that to you. Like, you're gone too much.
Yeah.
You need to redo this. And so that's what I did. Slowed it down a little bit. Tried to adjust things to make it. And so when I look at you, I go like, if you're happy with it, you're not worried about the balance of it, don't worry about slowing down. Push.
Right.
Because assuming you want where I'm at, right? Wife and kids and all that.
Yeah.
It's just, if you want to have if you want to be around your kids and be involved in what they do, that's time. And there's nothing wrong with that time. It's awesome time. It's just, you have to understand, as I understand now, is you just can't disappear in that time because that hurts that relationship, which is going to eventually hurt your podcast relationship because you're going to be worried about over here.
Yeah.
So it's all about balance. And so I tell you what, I would do nothing different. But when I hear you say, people telling me to slow down, don't worry about them.
Right.
Speed this sucker up so that I can interview a guy who's sitting down with all the UFC fighters and I can come get drunk on your dime and I can come watch some UFC fights. That's what I want.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not really even people telling you to slow down. It's just, I struggle a lot with impatience. And I want to be going full mock chicken, but there's other responsibilities. I may not have kids, but I have other responsibilities.
100%.
That take that place. And it's about, like you said, you nailed it on the head when you said balance. That's what you have to find. And to me, I don't want balance right now. Everything in me wants to do this and only this 110% with everything I have.
So what's holding you back?
I would say caring about what my family thinks. And they've done so much to get me where I am today. And I have an amazing job that is extremely fruitful and important and all those other things.
Can we keep using some of those words? Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just one of those things where you try to say, and I try to be as clear as possible, that, hey, this is coming and this is going to happen, and to try and get everybody else on board for this, and everybody else pushes back. And that hurts, right? It hurts to see people not get on board with what your dream is and to push back and to try.
You just don't understand.
But it's out of love. They want what's best for you. They don't want you to leave the security of a job that any 40-year-old would kill to have that kind of security for their family and that kind of responsibility and that kind of pull at your age that you started at 23. And you're going to throw that all away to chase a dream. And to me, fuck yeah, I am. I'd do it today. But you need to think in different ways. And the way I frame that is, now it supports me to do this. You look at this equipment around here. There's a reason I could buy that equipment, right? If I just did podcasts, that makes me zero money and I'd have no advertisers on. That wouldn't pay for this. There's other things that pay for this, right? To be able to take a Friday off work, drive down to Lloyd and interview people and do that. I can't do that if I'm not making money, right? So it's about understanding. So I know that feeds this, but the level that takes out of me, or not takes out of me, but requires a lot. I can't half-ass that. I can't half-ass that business. There's people that depend on me. There's people who, if I don't do my job, there won't be jobs for them and they won't be able to put up food on the table. So I need to balance that and make sure that is always, that 51% of me is with that, because that's what's important. And you have a full-time job. I'm sure you know this balance too. And I feel like with kids, those are in the same way. You can never let anything be more important than your kids, right? You can never let anything be more important than your work if you can't afford to lose that work. And go ahead.
Well, so it's funny, you started out with the pressures of staying in your job. Listen, I face the same pressures.
I know you do, and that's why I'm excited to talk to you.
I got a great job that anyone would kill to have, and the thing is, I like my job. That's a nice
me
kicker,
too,
right?
Me too.
It's not like I hate my job. Exactly. I actually enjoy it. I work with a great group of guys.
Exactly. And I almost feel like it's an insult to those people, because I love the people I work with, and I love the crews, and I love over these last 4 or 5 years what we've created and what we've built and taken, certain areas that are in absolute disarray, and to rebuild them up and have 100% new faces in there, and to have it be happy, and to get to go in there and see smiles on people's faces and they're enjoying their work now. That fills me up so much more. Obviously, we want to be profitable and all those other things that go along with business. But to me, that's secondary. I want people to enjoy coming to work, because that's what makes me come into work. The only things that everybody has days where they don't enjoy going to work, but 90% of the time,
there's going to be days where you don't like showing up to podcasting, right? And you're like, oh God, I just want to have a night at the house or whatever.
Right.
Doesn't matter what you do. Mm-hmm. You're going to have bad days. I was a hockey player for 26 years of my life. Yeah. There were a couple days in there where you didn't want to show up to the rink.
Right. For sure. But I feel like what made those days from good to bad was usually when other people were unhappy, right? And me feeling like I wasn't doing my job, because now if I was doing my job, there wouldn't be unhappy, or their problem. I would be able to solve their problems to put them in that spot. And that is what's going on. And I feel like, to me, it's not just that, but I feel like too, just drop that altogether and just go to run after this. It'd be almost an insult to all those people that have come along this journey and have busted their ass alongside me to build this up to what we have, to this amazing. I'm so fucking proud, especially since the pandemic, of what we've done as, that group of guys and girls in Grand Prairie, Alberta, and the whole company across, but that specific area that is mine and my responsibility. We did amazing things. The feedback we got from customers this winter of the service they got, and without having to just do what we saw so many people do, which is laying off all these people, the creativity we had to make sure that we kept all our staff on site. I'm so proud of that, and how everybody stepped up to fill those roles when times are tough, and you're going to have to wear a couple different hats, and you're going to have to do this, but that's what's going to keep this in a good position. And then when we come out of this, right, when all hit the shit, I'm so proud of that. I don't want to just, like I say, I don't want to just leave it, and I don't, and I am torn there. I want to make sure I can find a way that if I was to do that, and eventually I will, and I feel like I'm talking about this as if it's going to happen very soon, but I feel like it's down the road, right? Just like you talk about with Baker, right? Like, don't worry, this isn't happening tomorrow, but I want to make sure that I can find a way to make sure that they understand that I'm so proud of that, and I love that. This is just something I love more.
I think they already know that. And yeah. I would say the guys at Baker, I guarantee they know it.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I sometimes wonder if they've like put a,
have a tally go, have a death pool.
a fun little, dead. That's right. Right. Like a little fun pool going on. Like, is it 2024? Is it 6 months from now? And somebody, and somebody's getting mad at me when I haven't left, but they're happy you're there. I said, we talked earlier, you talk that much on a podcast, people get to know who you really are.
Right.
They understand by now that I don't dislike my work. I enjoy it, but they understand that I like this more.
Right.
And at some point it's going to come to a head, whether that's 6 months from now, 6 years from now, eventually it's just going to come to a head.
Right.
That doesn't mean anything against the guys I work with or the company I work for. It just means that, like you, I've found something that I really, really enjoy. And at some point, I'd love for, I don't know, name a company, just walk in, say, here's $1 million, go interview whoever you want. But the truth of the matter is, I'm not sure that's the way this is going to work for myself. Maybe you'll be different. It's going to be a slow burn, so to speak, I believe. And that means at some point you got to take the leap of faith. And for me, my leap of faith, and once again, I just bring up kids, and I don't mean it to make my circumstances more extenuating or anything, right? Like, it's just, at some point you got to take the leap of faith. And it's no easier for me as it is for you, because what you just said is exactly what goes through my mind. It's like, well, people think I should stay in this job, right? They think but I mean, so it's your life to live. You get, I remind myself all the time, Nick, you get one shot at this. And if you fail, at least you tried. Right. There's going to be, but then I also put the caveat in of what you said. Doesn't mean you don't plan. It's not like you just sit there and, okay, let's go do it tomorrow. Well, maybe that's not the greatest idea. Like, let's set ourselves up for a little bit of success. And so having a little bit of a plan in place, setting goals, all those things, and making sure when you do take the leap of faith, you give yourself the best opportunity for success. There's nothing wrong with that.
Right. And I agree with that. And that's where I am planning and I have ideas, and it's all based off of how quickly this podcast grows. And you can't control that. You just got to try and make it as good as possible in what way that you can. And then eventually that's going to happen naturally, and it'll get to that point. And there's going to be a point where that hits a head. And I don't know if that's different to you, of kind of in your head of what would bring it to a point where that's going to bring it to a head. And to me, the only thing that I really see on the side that's going to determine when and if that happens is the success of the podcast. And there's a million different ways to define success. But then in my head, so I have this idea of all these different ways, and it's not, and to me, it's not even a leap.
How do you define success? What is your definition of success? I gotta be honest. This is a question that is just, I don't actually ask it on the podcast that much, but off air, I ask it all the time, because I'm like enthralled with what is success
to me. I feel like you'll understand this, and I feel like the listeners might not, but it's access, right? To me, how I determine, right, for podcasters, usually if you want to look at what other people would deem success as a podcast would be how much money you make on it and how many downloads you get, right? That's kind of the two basic monikers that if somebody from the outside was asking of, well, how do you know how a podcast does? Or if you're trying to, as yourself, guess what that is. But for me, in doing it, what I'm looking for is to be able to ask somebody to come on and have them want to come on, and to have access to more people, and to be building that network, and to start seeing things come together, and this access to these people that I've wanted to have on start to come together. That is what's going to be success to me. And then those other things, downloads and money, that will come with that. But what I'm looking for is access, and that's just me personally, how I'm benchmarking what the podcast looks like to me. Do you kind of get where I'm coming from on that?
No, 100% get where you're coming from. I don't understand. Okay. I got to give this a little bit of a story.
Yeah.
I'm in a book club with Vance Crowe. Have you listened to the Vance Crowe interview?
I think I might have.
He's a very interesting guy. He's got his own podcast. And I've had people they're from St. Louis, the majority of them, go, man, your podcast must be extremely successful. And I'm like, why do you say that? Well, you're doing ad reads at the start. Obviously. And I'm like, so because I do ad reads, now I have a super successful podcast. Gee, to me, that's not how I define success.
Right.
But I'm a sales guy, right? So to me, I could be getting $2 an ad read.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Is that still successful? Right? Like,
right.
Why would an ad read all of a sudden equate to success? See, I understand the access because to me I mean, until Shaun Newman scores 50 goals in the NHL. Well, wait, I'm getting a little old for that. Or does something substantial in the world. I'm just Shaun Newman. And I don't mean that as a bad thing. I'm Shaun Newman. That's okay. So it becomes on access on where you can have these guests come in and roll through and people look at it and that builds on itself. I understand why that equates to success because that's what's drawing people in. You can be the greatest host in the world and you talk to whoever, your dad every night. Don't really matter. If people don't want to tune into you and your dad, they don't want to tune in. But also, you could be the Kardashians and I still don't get it. And look at them. And you're like, what the? I mean, I know everybody points to the sex tape, but I mean, Jesus, you watch their show, I want to pull my hair out.
Yeah.
But they're uber popular.
But how many seasons have they done, right? There's some people watching it. There's got to be.
No, everybody watches it. That's the stupid thing.
Apparently.
They've transcended everything because even I know they're still going.
Right.
And I don't want to know.
Yeah.
I want nothing to do with them.
Yeah. So then that is more or less, and it sounds like you understand where I'm coming from on that of what that is. And to me, it's not even access. It's not access to big names. It's the one that I care about, right? To me, to this point, my high point of the podcast was probably one of my lowest downloads ones. It was those two authors, and people have heard me talk about this a million times because it really impacted me. Was I had on these authors that write these fiction books that I love, and they're not, it wasn't a huge download. Probably was. I get more downloads just having somebody on from Slave that people know. But it meant so much to me, and I enjoyed for that hour and a half or 2 hours where I got to talk to these people that I've sat there and read these books and had all these questions about different themes and what that was. To have that access to talk to my heroes was so amazing. I don't care if I even released that. If I just kept that for myself and just had that moment, I could just rewatch it myself. That means everything to me. I don't give a fuck if it makes money.
I'm glad to hear that you have an episode that you love that people don't download.
Oh, listen, yeah.
Byron Christopher, I did the investigative journalist. It is the best, him and Judy Reeves, and I throw him and Judy Reeves and Cy Campbell. Cy Campbell's had more success because he's a World War II vet that resonates across anyone who sees that.
Right.
Plus he's from Unity, Saskatchewan, which small town, but Judy Reeves survives the perfect storm.
Yeah.
And Byron Christopher just has this unbelievable story. And what's always crazy to me is there's such good episodes. It's probably the best work I've ever done. And if I just throw Don Cherry on, it gets more downloads.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it makes no sense to me. All it means is I need to keep going because someday down the road, if I continue to get better, somebody's going to, because everyone who stumbles across Byron Christopher messaged me about it.
Yeah.
Wow, this is unbelievable. Why don't I know to do this episode more? And it's well, I don't know. And I can just follow along, right?
Right.
But what are you going to do about that? I'm glad to hear somebody else has that.
But when you say that makes no sense to me, that makes perfect sense to me. I knew that going in. I knew as much as I loved that episode that it wasn't going to get good downloads because I'd seen that. And I saw how, I feel like this is stupid to say because clearly I obviously I care about downloads and it's, I think it'd be silly for somebody and disingenuous to pretend that you don't, but to know that has no downloads do not mean a good episode. Like you said, I would say, maybe not the majority, but a ton of my favorite episodes, what I personally think are the best, are not very downloaded, right? Some of the ones that I actually don't not like any of the episodes, right? But there's certain ones that I think are better than others, and maybe I was on my game for it, but it makes sense to me because people don't know. They're clicking on a name. They're not clicking on the pod. It's not like we run commercials and a marketing campaign for each one, right? Like Godzilla, where you can tell, ooh, that's going to be good. I'm going to go watch that one, and then you go pick and choose from there. You were just shot in the dark to those people that are clicking that episode. It's a shot in the dark to what they're going to get and who this person's going to be, except if it's a Don Cherry. Now it's not a shot in the dark, and that's something that they can recognize and they're going to go to. So you have to completely disconnect the amount of downloads from the strengths of the episodes, right? And you go, and that's why I go off of the impact. And when someone messages me and says, hey, that episode really impacted me and I really got a lot out of it, right? Those are the ones I go, okay, I'm doing something right. And usually, like you say, which ones those are and which ones you feel those with. And I wouldn't even say that one with those authors was one of those, right? Because I feel like if somebody listened to it, they wouldn't be able to, maybe they would because they could see how excited I was to record it, but I wouldn't even put that in that category of these really good episodes when people hear, like, stumble upon, they go, oh, this is amazing. Like, that one was just amazing to me because it was special and it meant a lot to me. And those are important too. But now with that, it shows me that money and downloads don't matter at all because I got so much more out of that one episode because it meant something to me than I've gotten out of any other episode. And I'd be doing myself a disservice to be chasing people on a name and to know that I'm going to get downloads on them, right? That would be never something that I would ever want to chase.
And I've never, it's funny. When you say that, I've never chased anyone searching for downloads. I agree with you. It'd be disingenuous to say we don't stare at the numbers because it's hard not to, right?
Like, it's very hard not to.
I mean, that's what that's what media is built off of. You go to any show, they talk about the audience. They talk about how many people are watching. It's like, well, how many people are watching? Well, I don't know. Day to day, it differs, right? But man, I want a fun story.
Yeah.
Right? If Don Cherry's going to give it to me, like, don't get me wrong, I want Don Cherry. I want The Rock. Like, I want him. I know it's going to, if you ever get him, it's going to be like, holy shit, you're getting the 1,000 million downloads and it's crazy. And it's like, or maybe not. Maybe it doesn't do that. But it'd be really cool to have like good guests. You already know this. Like, a good guest is worth his or her weight in gold. Mm-hmm. Because I've had to because doing this is not a fight, but I've had to fight through some just like short-winded people. Yeah. And I mean that in the best possible way. And it's just like, dang it, we're here to have a conversation. If you don't want to talk, that's okay. Right. But we're just going to cut it short like immediately because like it ain't fun for the listener either. Mm-hmm. Like if it was just once, like if they didn't want to engage, then as an audience, what are you engaging with? Nothing.
Exactly. And you can feel that friction of the not wanting to engage too. And I hear that too. I've had to shut some episodes down a little earlier, either that or the guest has said, hey, I want to be out by this time. But there's definitely been ones where they said, yeah, we can do the full 3 hours. And a couple hours in, it's pulling teeth. And
so question on the 3 hours, is that something you strive for then? Because, when you say 3 hours, I when I first started, I did like, I can't remember. I want to say 25 minutes, 45 minutes, hour and 5, hour and 45. And it just kept getting longer. And then I kind of just slowly dialed it back. And now if I were to be honest, I would say anywhere between about an hour and 15 to an hour and 45. Mm-hmm. That's my window. If I don't hit an hour, I almost feel guilty about it. Not because it's just this weird thing. Like I hit an hour. I don't even have to try and hit an hour. It's just an hour anyway. Mm-hmm. But overall, I would say hour and 15 is probably ballpark. Yeah. Because even in myself, I feel like at an hour, you hit this like weird, like this weird wall. It's invisible, where you got to kind of like push through it. And then you hit, and you get another 50 minutes. And you hit the 2 hour mark. And there is a definite wall at the 2 hour mark where you're like, okay, let's read. And then as soon as you get to about 2:05, you can go for 10 hours.
Yeah.
Like the walls all disappear and you're in this like weird zone. So is there something about 3 hours for you that you just like, or why 3 hours?
So 3 hours, because there's been a precedent set by Joe Rogan that you can keep someone there for 3 hours. If it was up to me and a guest was willing, I would do over 3 hours.
Joe Rogan's done 5 hours.
And he has. And I've done 5 hours too, right? And I just released one that was 4 hours the other day. It's just, I feel I have an immense amount of guilt getting somebody onto the podcast and getting them to give me their time. I always feel bad. And that's why I always ask the guests, we'll do as long as you want. If you don't do an hour, I'm fine to do an hour. And I would much rather you be upfront with me than be like, fuck, I do not want to do 3 hours, but I don't want to be a prick. So no, tell me we'll do an hour. I've done an hour and I'm fine with that. I believe I have so much fun, Shaun. I never want to stop. You know, like with Tanner and Ken, me and Ken kept bullshitting for an hour and a half after a 3 hour podcast because I love this so much. It's one of those things where I will do as much time as I can. And usually what it is, right? And it's funny that you say that because I don't feel any walls. And usually it's, holy shit, it's been 3 hours, right? Like, you know, they always say that on Joe Rogan. I can't ever imagine. That is exactly how it feels every time.
I should be very clear about the walls. The walls are within me.
Yeah.
I can feel my, just like I just need to get up and move around. It's not that it's not fun. It's not that I even realize it's been an hour. It's like, I can feel myself. Okay, I gotta re-engage.
Okay.
Because it's a lot of talking, and I'm like you. If we stopped at an hour, I have no idea where we're at, but let's say we went 3 hours and it just blew by. Mm-hmm. Turn the mics off. I could see us sitting here for another 3 hours. That is exactly me. It's that happens all the time. It's like, oh, you should have just left it on. Like, what the hell were we thinking? Right?
Yeah. That's exactly what Ken said. He said, fuck, we should have just left this on, like this conversation. And his daughter was there, and she's so smart and had so many good points and was right in that conversation with us too. And it was awesome. And it was one of those things where I said, like I would keep going. And it's like, I didn't realize how thirsty I was for this. Whatever this is, whatever you want to break down this, whether it's just the conversation part of it, whether it's the connection, whatever it is. I didn't realize until I did my first one, I am desperate for this. And I felt desperate for it all the time. I felt like growing up in Slave Lake, there was conversations that happened and it was always the same conversation. And it was about the same kind of things. It's about, you know, how are the Oilers doing that stuff? And I'll talk that stuff all day too. But it's about the weather. It's about, I cannot stand small talk. I feel like it's not, this is going to sound awful, but for some reason I feel like it's beneath me. Like, why would we want to talk about it? If you want to talk, I will talk to you. It's not that I'm not above you. I'm above this conversation and we can do better. If we want to sit and talk about the weather, I know that we could have a conversation about something better than this. But you can't say that to people. But then once I found that I could have this, whatever this is, I am desperate for it now.
A deep, meaningful conversation. Yeah. You can say what it is.
Yeah, deep, meaningful conversation.
And humans search for, like, we enjoy connection. We enjoy interaction, right? Mm-hmm. Look at where we're at right now. Like they're trying to listen. Oh my God. Like I interview people in their 60s to almost 100 years old for the archives.
Yeah.
Right now, a lady who has sung her entire life, who's like 80 some, can't sing in the choir because it's illegal. That's exact words. And I'm like, you ever think you'd ever say that line? Yeah. She's like, no, I really didn't. I'm like, no kidding. Yeah. Like to have singing outlawed because it's going to spread the virus. Yeah. Let's get real here.
Yeah.
If anything, singing is probably going to uplift some spirits and make people a little happier. And if you can't see that as a lawmaker, I don't know what we're doing.
And I think everybody has that. Everybody has their singing in the choir. And I shouldn't say everybody. I think there's a big, huge part of the population that has something that they'd be willing to take some risk for. We can argue all day about what that risk is and how that risk looks and what the real risks are. But everybody has something they would risk it for, right? Like me and Andrew were talking about people that are chasing a journey of MMA, right? If you want to be a fighter and you want to dedicate your entire life to it and you're going to say, no, it's illegal to do what I've dedicated my entire life to right now. You're not saying that, hey, there's some risks here and it's up to you to judge what those risks are and if this is worth it to you.
Well, think of business owners, man.
Exactly. So that's what I'm saying. I feel like there's all these one-off stories that you can point to, but I think overall everybody has that, right? Mine is podcasting, right? Like technically I don't know if I am. I don't really give a fuck, but I probably broke some rules coming up to Lloydminster to record podcasts with a couple people in person like this. I don't give a fuck. You know, like, you want to give me a $1,500 fine for this? Go for it. Because I believe in this stuff, and this means something to me, and it means more than all that.
And if you took that $1,500 fine, took it to the courts, it'd be like, throw it out the door.
All those.
Because it means a fucking hill of beans.
Every fucking, I couldn't agree. I love that statement. I've said it myself too, is I think every fine they've given out, that every restaurant for staying open, is never. First of all, the courts are backed up, you know, like just through our business. I don't know if you guys are the same. We have to fight some tickets and we got to go to court for some stuff, right? You have this many trucks on the road, that happens. The courts are so backed up, A. And then B, as soon as these types of court cases start to get there, they are going to get absolutely obliterated. There's no way. There is no way. You're going to say that there's going to be a court in this land that is going to say, hey, my family was starving and I decided to open up my restaurant because we had no other means of money and I had to make sure that I had food on the table for my kids. You're going to stand up to that fine? I don't think so. And if they do, I think we got some questions for what we got going on there, right? And that's what I think. But
going back to, I agree with you.
Yeah.
Everything you just said, 100%. I think we're in the West. The West, I think we're lied to that 80% of the population doesn't think that. I think 80% plus thinks that and has no problem, for the most part, in a quiet room saying exactly that. I think the problem is that media and everything else, when you got to stick your head above the water, that's where things get dicey.
Right.
Now, when you go back to this and what it brings in, what you love about it, and that small talk, you don't like it. I had a lady in, this was probably 3 weeks ago, and her dad was Ray Nelson, and Ray Nelson and Lloyd is like Wayne Gretzky. And she talked about starting a business, and I said to her something along the lines of, I bet you probably got told your dad gave you the business, something like that, because rich, wealthy family. But by the sounds of it, you really had to work for it. And I really admire that, you didn't take the easy way, something like that. I'm paraphrasing. And you said you don't like the small talk. And what she said to me was, most people never go below surface level. And she sat there and stared at me for like this, like not awkward, but like
a poignant second.
That's right.
Yeah.
Of like staring at you like most people wouldn't say that because they wouldn't want to actually get into it. They just nod their head and carry on with whatever. And I think when you talk about I love the Oilers.
Yeah.
I love talking about the Oilers. I'm just like you. I could talk about the Oilers all day. And it has its time and its place, and I've never understood more clear than now in the pandemic why we need pro sports and that distraction, and like that's something to root for. But I also think, man, if we focused as much energy as we did on pro sports, we could probably fix some things in our country that are just like going batshit crazy all around us. And instead of focusing on that as a population, we want to focus on whether, I'm going to throw myself under the bus, whether Darnell Nurse is an $8 million demon.
Right, exactly.
Right? Because that's something that we can all argue and debate knowledgeably on. None of us know what the Constitution is, right? Like none of us, the government's not fucking us.
Right.
The government's got our best interest at hand. So let's argue about the Oilers.
Right. And that's a tough place to be. And that's giving those people that easy out, right? Is to be able to just say, oh yeah, they've got it handled. They have got our best interest at heart. Let's talk about this. That's an easy out, and it's easy to take that. And in having this conversation about the small talk, it's making me think about it more, because I think some people will say like, fuck, Nick, not like in small talk. You mean hit the guy that'll go out and just stand at the pumps and bullshit with whoever comes through about whatever, talking about the weather. I love small talk if I don't know somebody, because I want to do it to prove and see whether you're winning and how deep you're willing to go. I'll go to service.
You ever tried to see how quick you can get away from small talk and into something like serious?
All the time. That's 99% of every talk I've ever had. I'm willing to do small talk, but because I'm good at getting past that to whatever it is, I always end up in deep conversations. Just the other day, I was just out, like I just let my parents' dog go to the house and was walking out the dog, and it kind of ran up to one of the neighbors. Hadn't met him before. They just moved into this house, and no, shit you not, 2 minutes later, after 2 minutes of small talk, we were talking about LNG markets and how we're getting our lunch eaten because we didn't invest in infrastructure 10 years ago and all this stuff. And we sat there for 20 minutes bullshitting on, because I love this. Like I said, I'm starving for this type of conversation. I'm willing to have with everybody. But when I know somebody and we could have this conversation about anything, and like you say, you're willing to talk about the Oilers. I'm interested in everything. Whatever you're interested in knitting, let's go. Tell me about knitting. I'd love to learn about it, right? I am so interested in anything. I'd be willing to talk about anything that interests you. Why are we talking about small talk? Especially if I know you. Like if we already know each other and we've done the small talk's for people you've just met. Small talk isn't for people that you know. Real talk is for people that you know.
See, and I challenge myself all the time to see how quick I can get to let's get to something.
Yeah.
Like I'm not going to say the oil company, but I was at an oil company out doing whatever. This is probably 2 months ago.
Yeah.
And I'd been told the guy that I was dealing with was an ex-con, right? But a long time ago.
Yeah.
And knowing that piece of information, I was like, how long do I have to wait before I can just be like, listen. And I tell you what, by the end of our conversation, it was when I was reading Gulag Archipelago.
Yeah.
And he'd read it. He read it in prison. Said it was the most influential book of his life.
Wow. And
at the time I was reading it, was sitting in the truck. And when he told me that, I'm like, you're going to have no idea what's sitting in. And we had this weird bonding moment of wow, you were a super interesting dude. And you think how many times in life you just have how's the weather going? Oh yeah, great. Mm-hmm. And the Oilers, yep. Yeah. Lost last night. That damn Darnell Nurse fucking whatever, right?
Yeah.
And it's I don't know. I got nothing against it. I have a hard time now going back to it, right? The boys at work give me a hard time all the time because, here we go. Newman wants to have one of his deep conversations.
Same shit here. I hear that all the time.
Let's have something if we're going to sit and banter something, you want to get an emotion out of me. Let's talk about something that means something.
But, and I love what you said because I hear the same shit of, once again, now you're going into it, right? Because I always kept that hidden. And that was something when you talked about earlier was, I forgot where I was going with that. I was trying to run it back to something at the start there, and I lost it completely where I was going. Happens to me sometimes. Anyways, where I was going with that.
Happens to me all the time.
Yeah, happens to me all the time. But that point you were just making about having people kind of give you shit about, always wanting to go deep and stuff. I hear that too. But on the flip side of that, what I've also noticed is now that I put this podcast out and I've said to the world, hey, these conversations are what I love. So many people have come out of the woodwork that I never would have thought would have these conversations, have reached out on social media to just have a text conversation about these types of things that are way deeper and are just as desperate for this kind of deep conversation as well. And that is exciting to me. People I would have never guessed that would want to, have a deep talk on philosophy and religion and what it means and the loss of these things. And talks about their own masculinity and maybe missing out on some of those things because of where we grew up in that. And it's awesome to me. And I feel like that's the trade-off. Sure, you've put yourself out there a little bit. And now that's an easy attack vector for people to make fun of you, right? And it's always in good jest and it's those things. But then on the flip side of it, you see the opposite where now by putting yourself out there and showing that, hey, this is what I enjoy. I've gotten so much back out of that. And I've had so many, and I've reconnected with so many people in this new deep way. Whereas probably if we would have ever ran into each other again, it would have been just that small talk. And we would have just, oh yeah, no, nice to catch up. What are you up to? Just kind of that stuff. But now they know that I'm always willing to have that chat. Right? I'm desperate for it, right? You want to talk about doing 3 hours and how I would do as much as I can. So yesterday I came in, rolled into town, got all this stuff set up. Andrew rolled in, did 3 hours with him. Went out, did a couple things. The family was out of town. So just me and my girlfriend went and got food, had a quick nap, came back and then sat down, did another 3 hours with Ken and Tanner. And then after that, did another probably hour and a half with Ken and his daughter, right? Just bullshitting in here. Go grab a beer, and then a couple of the neighbors came over, sat around the fire and had the same types of conversations for that. Then come over here and sat with the kids, right? Kalen had a couple of his buddies over and just, try to pick up on what they were and trying to impart some knowledge and trying to get them talk. They were just talking about the same dumb shit and just same thing you're talking about, just trying to poke each one of them. What are you up to now? What are you going to school? What are you doing? And just trying to pull each out of every one of them, that kind of conversation. Then they all leave. And then Jason, who you just met, we sat in here till 1:30 in the morning, drinking beer and having the deepest conversations we could have had. So from 9:30 in the morning, almost till 1:30 at night, I was doing exactly what we're doing. Mic's on or off. I'm desperate for this. I would love to do this. So 3 hours is just what I feel like is now socially acceptable by Joe Rogan because he's set a precedent.
Yeah, he's pioneered it.
That's what I can get away with. And if somebody's willing to do that with me, I'm never saying that, like I feel like 3 hours is a lot to ask of them. That's why I always say, every guest I have on, I say, how much time do you want to do? I'm fine with whatever. I'm happy you're here and you're willing to have this conversation with me. And if we got an hour, we'll do an hour. If you're willing to say let her buck, we'll fucking let her buck. But I always tell people, don't say that thinking that I'm going to hold it back. Because if you really say let's go, I'm going to go. So if you say if 2 hours is your limit,
keep the Coors coming.
Yeah, exactly. If you say 2 hours is your limit, 2 hours is your limit, right? And I like that. And I feel like as I do more of it, that's going to become more. And as I talk on the podcast about that, people are going to realize it. And it's just gonna build that, I don't know, almost that take away some of the guilt that I have of taking people's time and making so that I'm not just throwing them at something they have no idea what they're prepared for. Okay, at a certain point, it's going to get to a point where, no, you know what you're getting into with this podcast. It's pretty, there's, at some point there's going to be 200 episodes for you to see of exactly what it is. And now it's less on me of this new thing. Because for the first, 5-10 episodes, you can't even, people go, what is it like? Well, you can go listen to those 5 episodes, but I'm still figuring out what it's like. You can't really show people. And as it gets more established, you can kind of have that. And I feel like that helps me a little bit with taking away some of that guilt, because I definitely have a ton of guilt over that. And over a lot of
talking? Things. Over talking for so long, you have guilt?
Not,
is that what you're saying?
Of just asking people I've thought deeply about this, and I know why. I don't know if I can articulate it good enough to get it across, but I have a huge ego, and I believe that eventually I'm going to get this podcast to a point where anybody be willing to come on. I know that that's a part of me, and I'm embarrassed about it, and I have guilt about it because I feel like it's a little bit icky, and I don't like that I think that highly of myself, because I hate that in other people when other people do it, but it's fine for me, and I'm a hypocrite. And I feel like that shines through is when I ask somebody on, it's like, I know in my head, I know you're going to have a good time and you're going to enjoy it. But I feel like that is such a cocky thing to think that it recoils me, because if anybody else did that, I would hate that in them. I don't know. And I feel like that's always the thing you see in other people is the things that you hate the most in people is what you see in yourself, right? It's the reflections of things you see in yourself, right? So I'm always looking at that and on guard for it. So for whatever reason, I do have guilt about asking people on and reaching out to people. And I know we've had some conversations about reaching out to bigger guests and stuff. And I just I can't bring myself to do it, because I just feel like, I don't even know, because then there's this added layer too, where it's like, I believe so wholeheartedly in what this is going to be and how great this podcast is already and is going to be. And if people gave it a chance, I believe in it so much that I almost don't even want to give people the chance to devalue it by saying, fuck, I don't even want to go on that, because it's like, you don't even know what it's going to be. I don't know. I'm still trying to figure this out myself of where these feelings come from and where it is, but I just know I have this guilt. I haven't fully flushed it out. I have a couple ideas.
I wish I could turn that side of your brain off.
Yeah. I wish I could too. But it's part of me. Or actually I don't, because I love myself and I love who I am and all my
No.
right?
And I don't mean it that way.
No, for sure. I was catching myself in saying that.
I just mean, I don't know. I mean, like, you're going like, I know how good a time you're going to have and you're going to love coming on. Yeah. It's like, I think that on mine too.
Yeah.
It's like, you're going to leave with a little giddy up in your step when you come in and sit down. That's what this is.
Yeah.
It's just a little dance. We're going to have a little fun. We're going to talk about some things and we'll see where it goes. But when you leave here, you're going to leave with a smile on your face. You're not going to leave going, well, that was an awful time. Right. So knowing that is just the knowledge of what you're providing.
Right.
I don't think you could sit there and feel icky about it, but at the end of the day, that's what it is.
And it does become less and less each time too, as it becomes more established, right? Like that feeling was way more episode 1 to 10 to 10 to 20 to 30 to 40, right? Like that goes away each time, because now I feel like there's some sort of proof, and I've had some sort of outside validation to say like, this isn't just me and my crazy brain thinking that I'm hotter shit than I am. Okay. Like, no, some other people have enjoyed this too. And have said, hey, I really get someone on your podcast, and that I'm hoping, but you never know. Right?
No, but to me, it has nothing to do with being hot shit.
Yeah.
All it has to do with is being like engaged.
Right.
Engagement is like, man, that's a powerful thing. Like sitting there and actually hearing what the other person said, being heard is like, man, that's enjoyable.
Yeah. And we lack that so much. So many people, if you don't have a podcast, where can you have like this level of engagement and this level of being heard and hearing someone?
It happens more than you think. I before I had a podcast, I had conversations all the time, like a lot with my sibling. I got 4 older siblings, and my sister and I used to call it the sphere, going to the sphere, right? The sphere of experience, right? We joked, we can get drunk and talk about things. The thing that a podcast that I love about it is it forces me to go to that place twice a week.
Right.
Twice a week I get to go there.
Yeah.
Instead of once a month, once every 3 months. Mm-hmm. And for me, and obviously for you, that's so beneficial. To just dig on some things. Mm-hmm. You're talking about digging into yourself. I'm talking about digging into myself in a different way.
Right.
And the audience gets to come along and experience that while we talk to, us two specifically, as we talk to guests, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to sit there. I think you've done it, the monologue. Yeah. I've never done the monologue. I don't know if I really have any
done 5
interest.
of them now.
Yeah, you have, haven't you?
Yeah.
Do you enjoy that?
I do. The first one was tough. First one, it felt awkward. It felt...
How long do you do the monologue for?
I've done an hour and I've done an hour and a half. So I'd say probably 3 of them have been about hour and a half, and about 2 of them have been an hour.
And what the hell are you talking about? Now I got to go listen to a monologue.
Yeah, I don't know. So sometimes I'll have an idea. Sometimes I just rip. The last one, the one that I released on Friday, was I did an hour and a half on all this conversation I had with you and with Tanner and Ken about COVID and the restrictions and the lockdowns and what I think on them and what makes me feel icky. And I just ranted for an hour and a half on exactly what I feel to get it all off my chest. And it felt amazing. One was I was having a lot of the struggles about the balance with work and these things. And I just sat there and tried to figure it out with myself and why I'm feeling these things and why it's so hard. It should be simpler than it is, but for whatever reason, the emotions get entered in, it complexifies it. And I just sat there and tried to figure that out to myself. And I felt so much better after it. It's almost like you're doing therapy with yourself. But like I said, the first one sucked. I did not enjoy it at all. It was not fun. It felt terrible. I second guessed. As soon as I was done recording, I was like, oh, that was trash, right? And I just didn't re-listen to it. Was planning on it. And I went into it and I said a couple times, like, I don't even know if I'm going to release this. I think I said on the first one, and I just put all my trust into the 2 people that I let see it, my sister and my girlfriend. I just send these 2 and just say, is this worth, or is this shit, or is this worth putting out? And they said, no, I think it's worth putting out. I enjoyed it. I think it's honest. And I think, you can tell it's a little rough around the edges, but I think it's good. And then the second one was immensely better. Once I had done that feeling and got that feeling out of it, of just sitting there and seeing myself on camera, of just being in front of the webcam and doing it, it felt great. And now I'm starting to see these other things I'm getting out of it, which I never planned on getting anything out of it. I just was kind of curious of what it was. And I found that since I started doing those, it's made me a better host when I have a guest, because I felt like for so much of the time I had so much to say that I would wait until a guest came on, and then we're having a conversation, but I was also trying to shoehorn the rest of the week's madness that's been going on up here, because this brain runs at a fucking, you want to talk 3 times speed, this brain's going at 10 times speed at all times. It never slows down. That's why I can never sleep. I was always a wild man in class. I could never do this. When we were trying to do hockey drills, I'm off doing snow angels in the corner, right? Like
you're the snow angel kid.
Yeah, I was the snow angel kid. Exactly. Right. Like, you know that very well. But having that hour, an hour and a half, just to get that all out of my system. Now, the next time I go on with someone, I'm so much more of a blank slate. I've found the pressure relief valve on my brain to just kind of let some steam off. Isn't that
interesting?
That I'm now way more emptied out and more, again, one of those words, but more present when I was on with somebody else.
No.
Which was something I did not expect to get out of it.
It makes absolutely complete sense to me.
Yeah.
Because I think if anyone knows me, I talk a lot. I'm involved in the conversation all the time. And on my podcast, I would say I let the guest dictate how much my involvement is.
Yeah.
They want to talk for 2 hours.
Yeah.
I'm going to listen. I'm very, very intrigued to hear their thoughts and pick as much out of their brain as I humanly possibly can.
Yeah.
Because I'm searching for it. Like, that's what I want. But when I get off the podcast, like my wife hates me, I'm sure. I mean that lightly.
Yeah.
But like, I constantly talk to people. I constantly am unloading my thoughts on the people because my worries, my concerns, my whatever, just to like get them out of my brain, because I get the brain thing where it just won't stop.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good thing. I think it's just, you need a healthy way to download, to offload, to just like, cause just saying some thoughts, you can be like, oh, I tell you folks, that was a weird one, right? Like, I get that, right? Like, I don't know why I was thinking that. It was stuck in there, but carry on. Like, I could see how that would be extremely healthy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I don't know. And before I started the podcast, I always thought that I would do a solo podcast as well, but I always envisioned it differently. And it was giving me an excuse not to do it. I envisioned, because some of my favorite podcasts, like one I point to is Brendan Schaub. He's an MMA fighter, and he does a kind of a solo podcast, but he's got a producer that brings him some topics and stuff. And I always envisioned doing that too, but I was holding myself back from trying it because I was saying, oh no, I'm just going to wait until I did that. And I always find I hate lying to myself, and I hate coming up with excuses and catching myself where I think it's, oh no, this is completely rational, it makes sense. And then I realize, oh no, you're just being a chicken. You just don't want to try this shit, and you're using that as an excuse. Right. And when that happens, I just force myself, which is what happened with the solo episodes. I realized I was just waiting on this one thing. And actually, the first solo episode I tried to do was with a couple other people that were trying to do it. And it just didn't work. It wasn't what I envisioned, which was entirely my fault. I could have done it better. I didn't put in the groundwork to make it what I wanted it to be, and then expected it just all to fall into place. And when it didn't, I was like, oh, obviously that's on you. You should have done a million other things. It's a complexity to get into it. But then to try it without all those bells and whistles, just sitting in front of the webcam, which was terrifying and I didn't think would be very good. And then to see it actually be half decent and then give me all these other things as well that I didn't think I would even get out of it. I wasn't planning to get out of it, but then I found, that's exciting to me. That's, I don't know. I really enjoyed it. And now my kind of plan is to, every second weekend, if I'm at home, if I'm not on the road out doing this, I'm probably going to try and do one of those solo episodes a week. And there were certain things that was eating away at me because I couldn't talk about it on the podcast, right? I just couldn't find the right guest. MMA was one of them. I love the sport of MMA, and I love hockey, but I feel like MMA is overtaking my love of hockey in terms of the top dog, right? Okay. I think it's probably still NHL, then UFC right below it. But they're jockeying for position right now. But I haven't been on this podcast I love, and I'm trying to, bring out all my passions. I haven't been able to have that talk with somebody. I mean, I shouldn't say that. I had John Morgan on, who is a MMA reporter, one of the biggest ones. He's huge, which was another one of those guests that's, that's like a dawn cherry to me. I was so excited. And again, not crazy views, right? Like not a lot of people went and saw that one. And I knew that going in, because the episodes that do good is if I have somebody on from Lister Hall, which is the residence in university, because that's where a huge majority of my friend group are, or if I have someone on with a big name from Slave Lake, because that's my area of influence. Yeah. But that doesn't matter to me. That John Morgan interview was amazing, but it was only, 45, 50 minutes long, because he's a busy guy. And again, whatever he gave it was amazing. But then I did these solo episodes, and I could just talk about, there's a card coming up, and just kind of bullshit with myself. And it scratched the itch a little bit, but it wasn't totally. And then to get to sit down with Andrew yesterday and have that conversation that I've been itching to have was amazing. But it's so nice to just have that little pressure relief of just, if there's a subject that I've really wanted to talk about, but I can't find the right guest to do it. And what I found myself doing was I was shoehorning those topics with the wrong guest. I was trying to force it into a conversation where it didn't fit. In that solo episode, it might not be perfect, because like you say, I do so much better when I have somebody to volley against than I do with myself. And I think that's just because I haven't talked to myself a lot. And I feel like, just like Bill Burr, when he started doing his podcast that's solo and just him ranting, it wasn't very good. And it's a skill, just like everything's a skill, and I'll build up with it. And I've seen from the first one to the fifth one, that change. And I'll probably get better at doing it by myself. But until then, that is that little pressure relief valve I can use to get these certain topics out, so that I don't have to overrun a conversation. It's making me better with the guests. And I don't think until this conversation, I don't think I realized all these things of what I was getting out of it, because I've never had to sit and think about what I was getting out of them, which is what I love so much about these conversations. So much of the time I just find I'm articulating in real time these things that I've been feeling, but just didn't recognize.
I go back to, I bring it back to Jordan Peterson, right?
Yeah.
Like he says over and over again in his lecture series, which is unbelievable, that he's thinking while he talks, right? Like he's trying to discover the answer while he talks. It's why if you go back to Jordan Peterson from the mid 2000s to, I don't know, when did he become famous? Not
2016
famous,
about?
Yeah, somewhere
16,
in there.
17, yeah.
Like, so just before he becomes famous, if you go back and listen to his lecture series, like it's fantastic. And he'll say over and over again, you have to understand, I'm thinking while I talk here. I don't have the answer.
That's one of my favorite parts about listening to him.
Yeah.
And you can see it. You can see him formulating in real time, and you
like
can see him
trying to develop the answer. And then he'll say something and he'll go, nah, I don't know if that's right. Yeah. And then he'll go off and he'll talk about it. Now, with a guy like Jordan Peterson, you're talking about a guy who has easy 20 years on us.
Yeah.
And I remind myself all the time, Joe Rogan is a guy who has 20 years on us.
Yeah.
I'm like, in 20 years, where do I think I can be? Honestly, if I stick with this and continue to develop on myself and continue to search and continue to, it's like that type of investment, sky's the limit, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
And so you just got to stick with it. Like, just stick with it. You know, you talk about in 5, what do they say about weightlifting? Is it? I'm sure it's with weightlifting. It's the first 2 weeks you're going to see these amazing gains, and then it becomes the grind, right? Where now it takes months.
Yeah,
and that's what everybody gets hung up on, right? Oh shit! Put the years in and see where it goes.
Yeah,
right. Like, who knows where we're at in a few years?
And exactly what you just said about seeing these people that are in this position and knowing that you have the years to get it, and if you're willing to not give up and to grind of where you're going to be in that time, that's exactly what gives me that belief and that faith, or whatever you want to call it, in myself, that eventually I'm going to be able to interview any UFC fighter I want and any author I want.
Is that what you want? Is that if you had your choice, like one of my favorite questions is like, tomorrow, if you could sit down with anyone.
Lex Friedman.
So it isn't UFC.
No, that's just, that is, like I said, with Joe Rogan, where he's got all these avenues, right? I would say, if you wanted like my overall top 10, I don't know if a UFC fighter would crack it.
Really?
Right? That's what I'm saying. But it's something I'm so passionate about. Same with NHL guys. I would love to have so many NHL guys on, right? But in my top 10, I don't know if it would crack it. I think it'd be authors.
Who's on your top 10? I mean, Lex Friedman?
Lex Friedman for sure. Joe Rogan, Eric Weinstein, Brett Weinstein, bunch of comedians. I have it. It's all in an Excel document. I have it. And
fair enough.
It is ginormous, right? And I have it all separated out into like these type of guys, right? And that's what I'm saying, the top 50. And I'm just picking those names from it, right? Like I would say for sure Joe, Lex, and Eric Weinstein would be in the top 5 for sure, somewhere in that mix, and the rest I'd have to fill out and really give some more thought or pull up my shit on my phone.
Here's my dumb push to you. Have you tried getting? Joe Rogan.
Yeah, no.
I'll admit this. I've searched. It's a little tougher. But the Weinsteins, have you ever tried?
No. Well, little ways, but not. I haven't put my full force behind it. Like just little things thrown out there, but I haven't actually.
So then here's my real dumb question. Why not?
Yeah, that's a good question. I ask myself that too. And I lie to myself and I come up with reasons and they're bullshit.
So stop.
Yeah.
Just try.
Yeah.
The only one, Joe Rogan, I tried lightly. I'm like you. I tell myself.
You realize
but the one guy I tried, I tried as hard as I could and I still got shut down, was Wayne Gretzky. I wanted Wayne Gretzky for number 99.
Right.
I had this is going to happen, and we got as close as Glenn Sather. Right?
Yeah.
And I don't know. Geez, I thought that was pretty close. And it still didn't happen. Yeah. And that sucked. That was a shot to the old ego because I was like, I can make this happen. I can make this happen. I can make this happen. And it didn't happen, and that sucked.
Yeah.
But, I don't know. I'm not sitting here saying if tomorrow you start, you can get it, but if you don't try, it certainly is fucking happening.
Exactly. And I say I don't know why, but I have an idea, and it goes back to some of the things I was talking about earlier about that idea in my head of knowing what this is going to be one day and really struggling with giving people the opportunity to throw it in my face and to not see it. You know, like it's not only have I not tried with Lex Friedman, I haven't given a real call to try at anybody. I have to this point, if it hasn't been easy, I haven't. Everybody I've got on, it's been easy because I haven't put that work in because something in me, it's definitely my ego, 100% it's my ego that is saying, is protecting myself because it doesn't want to put myself out on that limb to be told no to. I don't want to make myself that vulnerable.
You know how many
to
times
put everything
I've been
I can
told no?
into. A lot.
How many times do you think I've been told no?
Got to be hundreds.
0.
Really?
No.
Wayne Gretzky.
But I've been ghosted.
Right, exactly.
Wayne Gretzky never said no to me.
Right.
Wayne Gretzky never got on the phone and said, no, I don't want to do that. Let me give you one insight from what I've learned is they're humans just like me and you.
Yeah.
If tomorrow, I don't know, Bill called you up and said,
original.
"Hey Nick, would you come on my podcast? Just starting out, would you come on my podcast? What would you do?"
For sure. 100%.
Okay. So you're a human. Wayne Gretzky's a human. The difference is obviously levels. That's all it is. And then Wayne Gretzky, as I lift up my beer can and act like he's this Coors original, is got about 7 circles around him that you have to penetrate. But if I could talk to Wayne Gretzky, if I could sit on a couch with Wayne Gretzky, I guarantee he'd be like, yeah, let's fucking do it. I got time.
Yeah.
Right? Let's
go. For sure.
But you got to find a way to get through the 7 things.
Right.
And my perfect example of this is Keith Morrison, who is the Dateline guy with the great voice and whatever. It took 8 months, 80 emails. I can't even explain how hard I tried.
Right.
And when I finally sat down with them, and I mean this in the best possible way, but that motherfucker says to me, I go, yeah, I got told I only got you for half an hour, so I'll be watching the time. And he goes, oh? Who said I only got half an hour? And I'm like, I'm only going to keep you for half an hour because if I keep you for an hour, I'm never getting you back on. But I'm like he has no idea that I've been trying.
Yeah.
Not a clue.
Yeah.
And at the end, he goes, I just really like deep conversations. And I'm like, don't say that shit because that's what I'm into. Yeah. But that's the difference. He's just a human. He has no problem talking to people. He's just time committing and in fame, and he doesn't have control of his social media and everything else. And so by protecting yourself against that, you're actually harming yourself because I've never been told no. Right. I've been ghosted. The one that hurts is, sorry, Kevin Martin, right? Like the curler.
Yeah. I
had him. He called me up 20 minutes before we were supposed to go on. Hey, are we still doing this? And I was nowhere near anything because I forgot to write it down. And I was like, oh shit. Like, no, we aren't. Like, I'm actually busy right now. I completely apologize, whatever. He's like, nope, not a problem. Click. Never talked to me again. Tried reaching out, oh, fuck me. I guess Shaun's a human being too, but that doesn't equate to people on that side of the planet. That pisses me off. It really does because the thing that's happened to me is if I get, I don't know. I won't say any names, but I've probably had 5 different people, notable people, 7:00 Tuesday night. Sounds good. 7:05.
Yeah.
Email. Are you coming?
Yeah.
Nothing.
I've had that too.
All I can do is I can't do anything about that. And so then all I do is exactly what I go back to with the positive thing. Obviously, it wasn't meant to be tonight. I can't get mad at them because what am I going to do?
Yeah.
And they've all come back on. Every last one of them. Except for Mr. Curler, who, if he hears this, I'm still pissed about it, right? Like, yeah, I fucked up, but I'm allowed to. People are allowed to fuck up.
People
but
fuck up.
This is going back to you, and I would say you gotta expose yourself to that because saying no is really tough. Like people don't want to say no, and maybe you're gonna find one asshole who says it. But I'm telling you right now, I haven't been told no 1,000 times. I've been ghosted as many times as you can count. Right. I've sent emails to no response as many times as you can count. But the amount of times that it's come back no has been Cal Nichols. I guess now that I'm thinking about it, Cal Nichols has said no, and Cal Nichols is coming on in May. Do you know who Cal Nichols is?
I have no idea.
Took me 2 years. Cal Nichols saved the Edmonton Oilers. It's going to be fantastic. I can't fucking wait. And he's from Paradise Hill, Saskatchewan.
Oh, nice.
That way.
Yeah.
And he told me no. So 6 months later, I called him again. And he said, "You're a persistent little bastard, aren't you?" And I said, "Well, I just want you on. We can talk about whatever. You don't want to talk about the Oilers? Fine."
Yeah.
And I called him 6 months later. And then I called him 6 months later. And now he's going to come on. And I've been told by J.P. Kelly, who is coached me in hockey and played for the LA Kings and lives here in Lloyd. And, everybody's got their reason. Yes, he doesn't. But honestly, I think you need to open yourself up to it because people don't say no that often.
Right.
At all.
And I feel like, and I agree, and you're right. And as you're saying that, I think it is definitely the no that I am worried about. I feel like that is a piece of it, but there's also other pieces of it too. So now when we talk about Joe Rogan, we know those levels of insulation and the work that it would be to get to those. And I see, and we've talked about this before, of the work that you put in to get these guests on, whereas I haven't been doing the same. I've been relying on, friends and family, people I know, people that I can reach out to. And I do those soft little reach outs to see trying to just probe how many layers they have. Beautiful, beautiful sound. How many layers they have of that insulation. And I feel like I'm always doing that judgment call in my head of, I only have so much time. And I know you're going to say, you got more time than.
No. I'm not going to badger you on time anymore. I honestly, I won't badger you on time.
And it's a thing about me. I just always want to be efficient. I have a weird obsession with efficiency. I've been obsessed with it all my life. And it comes.
But who do you want to get? Like reasonable. Who's reasonable that isn't layered? Because I want Wayne Gretzky, but Wayne Gretzky, the only reason I want him now is because I've had the Don Cherry and the Ron McLean and the Grant Fuhr and the Marty McSorley, all these people that surround him. I'm like, okay, how many more guys do I got to get, Wayne, that you're like, you know what? That would be interesting. And I already know what I'd ask him first about.
Yeah.
Like Ace Bailey was his roommate. Ace Bailey died on the plains in 9/11 and has got a heritage to Lloyd, like has a surrounding in there.
Yeah.
And Gretzky talks about him in his fucking book. Yeah. And I'm like, wouldn't that be amazing to talk to him about? You don't think Wayne Gretzky would want to talk to him about that?
Sure.
For sure he would. But how the hell do you get that through to him? Mm-hmm. I have no idea. Mm-hmm. But I got to work on that.
Yeah.
So who's the reasonable guy you want?
There's so many, right? Like I'm trying to, when there's so many that it's hard to pull one out of your head, but like, I'm just trying to think of all these avenues. So if we just go down the one of them I said was YouTubers, right? So that's something I've yet to be successful. I've reached out to some, and there's probably, I can name a bunch of YouTubers that I know, right? I would say the name, but you wouldn't even recognize any of them, right? Like Bunny Fufu and Small Ant and all these guys that I watch and I really like what they do. And I know that's not your domain, but I have reached out to them.
You get Bunny Fufu on, I'm totally listening.
Yeah, exactly, right?
I tell you what, you get Bunny Fufu on, I kind of want to interview Bunny Fufu.
Hey, there you go. There you go. He's an interesting cat. He does that and he's very successful with what he does. And I love how he does that. And I love his business mind behind what he does with YouTube and how he likes to make money with it. And his content too is very engaging, but then on the other side of it, I love the business side of it too. And I'd love to ask him about that.
So why don't you put that in an email and send it off?
I have, for sure. Yeah. So I put it in an email and I've sent that off and I've reached out to him on Instagram and Twitter and nothing. And then, a couple other things that he always says like, hey, I read every YouTube comment. I think I've emailed him twice, maybe twice on social media. And then at that point, that's where I go, all right, I've tried. If he's going to see it, he's going to see it. And then I back off and I haven't tried again. Mm-hmm. Whereas I feel like when I hear from you of what that's going to take is to invest. It's almost like paralysis by analysis of like, there's so many guys that are on that level that I know I could get if I was to invest everything to go after them. But it's just like, and I know the solution to this is just to pick one and make that and drive at it. But I feel like I almost think like there's 5,000 people on that level that I could get if I just put in.
I guess where my brain goes and what I understand exactly what you're saying, right? Okay. So I thought the way you'd said it, that you hadn't even emailed the guy.
No,
like,
no.
You've already emailed.
I've never tried it like the Lex Friedmans and those guys that are of a different sense. But when you bring
because they're in a realm of their own.
Right. And I haven't really taken any swings at them. But what I have done with those guys is on my Instagram page and stuff, like I talk about it. When there's a really life-changing podcast that Lex Friedman does, it really impacts me deeply. Like I'll put a post up on my Instagram story and do a write-up of kind of how it impacted me and put it so that every time in that chat thread, it has all these documents of how he has touched my life and all those stuff. I've never reached out and asked him to be on the podcast, right? But I've done my work and I support him and I've talked, like if you take up those first 60 episodes, there's probably a whole 3 hours of that's just me talking about my love of Lex Friedman, right? And what he does and what he's done for me and what he showed me. And that to me is all groundwork. So then there's going to become a time, I know this, that I'm going to have Lex Friedman on this podcast, and it's going to be due to that groundwork that I've done. It's not me reaching out and pounding on his door right now, because I don't think I'd be ready to have him on right now. I mean, I'm sure I would, and I'm sure it'd be one of the best interviews he's done because of how much
I know. I go back to, I really want Jordan Peterson on my podcast.
Me too. That's another one of those ones.
The thing is the way you talk about Lex Friedman.
Mm-hmm.
I've read all the books of Jordan Peterson. I've spent, I don't know, Jordan Peterson changed my life. It's as simple as that.
Mm-hmm.
Don't have to go any further than that. And he changed it at a time it needed to be changed for me. It needed to be. I was going down when he talks about his self-authoring, where you could paint where you're going to go and where you could go, and the black and white kind of it, that was easy for me. And he just hit, call it serendipity, call it whatever you want to call it, right?
There's words for everything.
Yeah. It was perfect timing, finding him or him finding me or whatever. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I think we make problems we make them as big or as small as we want.
Yeah.
So I want Jordan Peterson on. Me and you understand how giant of a fucking ass that is, right?
Yeah.
My wife, who she understands who he is, just makes it simple. She goes, so go get him on your podcast. I started laughing. I'm like, it's not that easy. She's like, I don't know, isn't it? He's not Wayne Gretzky. And I'm like, right?
Of his world, he's kind of the Wayne Gretzky of...
he's not Wayne Gretzky. He's like Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
But she raises a good point. He's Michael Jordan with us. Mm-hmm. But to my wife...
But he grew up in Fairview, fucking, an hour down the road from my house.
That's right. So all I'm saying is like, if you never take a shot, you can never score. Like, it's simple as that. Like, the puck never leaves your stick. We all know that. Mm-hmm. And it's like, the fear of rejection sucks, but never trying, you'll never know.
Right.
And so for a guy like Jordan Peterson, honestly, if I go 20 years and he passes away in the next 5, next 10, whatever, and I never get him on, it'll be a deep regret.
Yeah.
Not because I think I can have, honestly, not because I think I can have an episode that people are going to tune in and it's going to make me because I just want to talk to him.
Me too. Yeah. I know exactly what you're saying.
Right.
Yeah.
I just want to talk to him.
I know. And you said something there that this is another big piece of this is I so truly believe, like, I don't even care about the views. Right. And I feel like a guy like Jordan Peterson all day is getting guys that are just reaching out because they want him, because they know he's a name and that it's going to bring views.
Well, look at his podcast. That's what he's doing now. Right. He's taking all the big names.
Yeah.
Right. It's
Matthew McConaughey. And,
right. Yeah. Well, Matthew McConaughey and, he just had a senator on.
Yeah, which was an amazing conversation.
Yes,
did you listen to that one?
Yeah.
Oh, so good.
And shit, I'm forgetting. He had Jocko on.
Yeah, another amazing conversation. Like, I'm right with you. I love Jordan Peterson. I just read 12 Rules for Life. I had it in my house. I bought it right when it released, and I never read it.
Oh my god!
It sat at my house. I just finished it, and then I read his new one that just came out. I'm about 3/4 of the way through that, and then I ordered Maps of Meaning. His textbook.
Maps of Meaning is a tough read.
I'm a tough reading guy. So
I know, but even Jordan Peterson talks about how
for sure.
he wasn't there yet. He couldn't formulate the ideas as well.
Yeah.
So by reading these 2 books, it is going to be a tough read because it's dense and it isn't so well put together. Like his new books, 12 Rules of Life is like exceptional.
Oh,
his new one
of the best books I've ever read. Yeah.
Just because he's there, he's at a level where he can articulate it very well and like very like simple. It's just like it's there, and you're like, oh, there it is. Maps of Meaning. It doesn't mean the idea isn't there. It totally is. It is the dense read.
Yeah.
Not to steer you away from it because I've read it.
And to see all that and to understand just what an intellect he is and what a powerful person and how the way you talk about what he's given to you when you read it, he's given so much to me as well in a different way. I didn't need him like so many people do when they find him. I feel like in finding his writings, it's giving me articulation for things I've felt for a long time. And I've been trying to help other people in the same way that he's helping people. I've been trying to, but I didn't have the language to do it. I was always seeing the potential in people. That I've talked about this on a couple podcasts is if ever anybody's one of my friends, I'm always seeing them for what they could be. I'm not seeing them for what they are now. And this is something that gets me every time I ask somebody on the podcast, not these big names, but like some of my friends, oh, well, I haven't done anything, or what do I have to offer? And everybody says that. Every person I've had on the podcast so far has said that exact sentence. Like, why do you want me? Like, what am I going to bring to it? And I always say, like, first of all, you're not giving me enough credit. But second of all, I see you for who you could be. If I'm asking you on this podcast, I see something in you. You may not see it yet, but I'm betting that I'm going to have you on this podcast now. And in 5 years, I'm going to have you back on, or 6 months, whatever. And you're going to show, and you're going to prove me right. And this is a bet that I'm putting on myself. If I know how to pick them, and I'm having people on and I'm bringing up the aspects and almost calling my shot of, hey, I see this in you. Right. And you can take that or leave it. And I bet you there's going to be people that I've already had on this podcast that in 5 years, we're going to have on 10 years, 20 years, they're going to do amazing things in the ways that I've said that they are amazing because they just don't see it yet. And I'm always trying to help people like that. But then finding Jordan Peterson, he gives so much. You don't want to ever call something perfection, but I just, like you say, he's been working on this for so long and trying to find the right words and the right ways to articulate the stuff. It's so refined. These ideas of how to help people and how to, not just how to help, but how to break through, how to make these ideas sink in, because so much of what he's saying is just cliches, right? But some cliches are there for a reason, but cliches are cliche because they're that sounds like the dumbest sentence. Cliches are cliche because they're cliche. Great sentence, Nick. But I'll try and articulate on that and make, the difference between a cliche and a real meaningful statement is if it impacts you and if it actually enters, right? And Jordan Peterson is the master of talking about narrative and storytelling to make those, right? And he's the master of it.
He's bringing the West back to religion.
Right. Exactly. But in his own way. And what I talked about earlier of, there's a little piece in this book, and this book, and this book, and that's what he does. This is a lot of where I always felt this, but he gives better language. And actually, I can't just say Jordan Peterson because I feel like Jordan Peterson is now giving better articulation, but I got to this idea from Aubrey Marcus and from Pete Holmes and from a bunch of other people that gave me this idea. And then I always thought it was true, but the way they were describing it didn't feel right. But then when Jordan Peterson says it, almost the exact same things these other people are saying in his way, it rings so true. And I feel like that's because he's been trying for 20, 30 years to distill these things down into the best possible way to articulate, right? He's refined it. So that when you read it, it's almost like this is just a 6,000 page book condensed down into 400 pages of these books. And that's why I can't recommend anybody enough, like 12 Rules for Life.
Well, you talk about, when people are struggling or, I don't know, stuck in a rut or whatever, my first suggestion right now is 12 Rules to Life.
Yeah.
And I'm like, even if, it's a little dense and you're not a big reader, I'm like, honestly.
Listen to it. That's what I always tell people. Listen to it. Buy the audiobook.
It's just, there's so much in there that is just so, like, transferable to everyone. It's like simple.
And not just transferable, but transcendent. I
gotta go back to, it isn't Jordan Peterson. I gotta go back to something else you said. Yeah. You said you're very strategic in bringing people on, and they're like, I don't know why you want me. And you're like, well, I can see what you want to be. And that's why I want you on, because I'm betting on my ability to pick people.
Right.
Would you believe it that I go completely in the face of that? In the sense that I'm not as strategic as you. I don't know how to put this. I believe every day is going to present a new opportunity. Mm-hmm. It's whether or not you want to seize said opportunity,
right?
To grab it for what it is. And with guests, that's exactly what I do. So, case in point, this is exact. Okay, so this coming week, I have Bob Strum on Monday, who's 40 plus years in hockey, from the Regina Pats to the Columbus Blue Jackets to the Detroit Red Wings, all this. 10 days ago, I didn't know who Bob Strum was. A guy that I've had on called me and said, you need to have this guy on.
Yeah.
Okay, sure, done.
Mm-hmm.
The second guy is Kim McConnell, who nobody knows who the hell that is. But as I was telling you, he's got the highest civilian award in Canada. He's got this ridiculous amount of whatever. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Interesting person. He fell in my lap 4 days ago.
Right.
And that's kind of how I run the podcast. I'm actually less strategic about it because I'm just kind of like, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen.
Right.
Now, it doesn't mean I don't go after, let's be very clear. Ron McLean did not come in that way. Mm-hmm. You got to go after those people, the bigger names. But I've really, after probably like the first, maybe where you're at, just went, let's see where this goes.
Right.
Like, do people, for me, it's kind of like some of the best guests I've ever had. Actually, I know the best guests I've ever had have come off of my audience telling me, I want this person. This is why you should have them.
Right.
So I'm kind of like dropped the reins and went, let's see where this goes.
Right. And I feel like I need to go back to what I said, because that is one aspect of how I do it, because I also do the same thing of just letting it ride and see what falls into your lap. Because at this point, I want to do, if I had 7 people in a week that would line up, I would do a podcast every day.
I agree.
I am trying to do as many, like the reason I have, probably close to 70 episodes, like I've 61 released, but in one's banked, especially after this weekend, I'll probably have closer to 70. The reason I have 70 is because 70 people have agreed to do it. It's not because that's how many I could fit. No. If 150 people were willing to do it, I would have had 150 episodes, because I want to do as many as I can. And
but I think 150 people would be willing to do it.
Right. And it's just about who I ask. And I always try and say, if anybody wants to come on, just reach out to me. I've never said no. I want everybody on. I want to hit my 10,000 hours. I feel like if I'm doing my job right, it doesn't matter who's across me. I should be able to pull a story out of you, and I should be able to pull a conversation out of you. It does not matter.
The old 10,000 hour rule.
Right. And not even just strictly, but I just want to get better. I'm not making
fun of it because I subscribe to it.
Yeah.
That's why I go as hard as I do right now.
Right.
Think of how much better you've gotten since the start. We're starting to spin the wheel here a little bit, but
yeah,
I just think I've had people listen to episode like 7, episode 62,
yeah,
and then episode 150, and then text me and go, man, you've gotten so much better, it's not even funny. Mm-hmm. Like, way better. And I'm like, oh, okay, right?
Yeah.
But all I'd have to do is go back and listen to what they're talking about and be like, oh,
yeah.
Like, shit.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you can see the growth.
Mm-hmm. And I see that too. And that's, again, one of the biggest things I get messages, man, you're getting so much better, right? Like, that is one of the biggest things I hear from people. And definitely the ego pipes up and says, I was great from the start. Fuck you. Right? Like there's a tiny little piece of me that says that. 99% of me goes,
that's probably a good thing though.
Oh yeah. Right. But that's just always me. And I know that. And I feel like being upfront about that and knowing that I have that in me is, good to talk about. But then the rest of it is so grateful that that's what's happening, because that's exactly what I'm going for. And, like 10,000 hours is the moniker I use because I feel like it's recognizable. And when I say that, people understand it. But that's not what I subscribe to. What I subscribe to is the comedian's mindset. right? Like where I got into podcasts was listening to comedians, and what they talk about is that open micer stage. Like I'm not talking about this as I'm just trying to get my 10,000 hours. I'm talking about this. I'm in my open mic stage right now. Any stage time you can get, you have to fight for it, right? Like if you want to become a comedian at the start, you have to go play in dive bars and anywhere. You have to be wherever you're willing.
And you want to be the Beatles.
And you make it, right? Like this might be the tiny show to 10 people, but you have to make that the Opry stage, right? Like you make what that is, and you have to learn how to play every single one. You need experience in, playing in at Joe's Crab Shack in the back bar with the sports game on. You need to learn how to overcome that. You need to do this. You just need to get experience, right? Like, which is the same thing as 10,000 hours, but it's
a different way of going about it.
Just a different way.
You know the story of the Beatles?
I don't. Well, here's what I guess my idea of what I think the story of the Beatles is that everybody thought they were this overnight success, but there was this one bar or something that they played like hours and hours every night for years and years and years before they came. And that's when
they used to go over to France.
Okay.
France or Amsterdam. It doesn't matter.
Now
I'm going to butcher this. They used to play 10-hour sets.
Holy fuck.
Like play these ridiculously long sets with nobody watching.
You are going to get better doing that.
And just all these different, think about the Beatles. Like think about the sounds they have.
Yeah.
And so how do you play 10-hour sets and shit like that? Well, you start to have a little bit of fun with it. Because that's the only way you're going to do it.
Yeah.
Which means you evolve, you develop new things, you try things, because what the fuck does it even matter?
Yeah.
And if I think I'm in my Beatles stage, right? Like it don't matter how successful people really think you are. It's like, it fucking means hill of beans. Let's try some things. And if it sucks, well, let's not try that again.
Yeah.
Or let's try it a little different.
Yeah.
But some of the things, that you've certainly tried, right, have bared fruit. Some of the things that I certainly tried, right? Like in the beginning, I would have never thought of interviewing some of the people I have. And then you interview them and you're like, God dang, that was good.
Yeah.
Let's do that again.
Yeah.
And if you do that enough times in a row, this is something.
For sure.
And that's the Beatles. And Beatles is what? Most famous band ever? Top 5 for sure.
Yeah, top 5 for sure, yeah.
And there was a time there that by the sounds of it, they sucked.
Yeah, everybody sucks.
And they were doing like ridiculously long sets to nobody. Who gives a shit? Let's fucking figure out what we're doing here.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a gift. To be able to live those times and to do those things, right? Like to use my framework of the comedian, that's a blessing that people don't, that you're not, that comedy that you're bringing on stage for those first couple of years, you're so lucky that's not in front of 10,000 people, because that would crush you, right? That is a blessing to be able to do it and to make those mistakes when nobody's listening. And then when people come on later, right? And there's going to be people that are there from the start. There's always people that get on the ground floor, but all the time, I'm sure you have this too, people can contact you. Hey, I just gave the podcast a try and I went back and I really enjoy it, right? And they're coming in at a different level. They're getting a little bit less of that suck, right? Because they're coming in at a time where you already have a little bit more experience, right?
Less of that suck,
right? Like they didn't have to go through.
You're a little less of that suck right now.
Yeah.
I really enjoy it.
Yeah, it's pretty good, but that's a different level. But you're gonna have that, and then just with how the trajectory works, is you're gonna have more people coming in, right? Like a 2x growth for me right now would not be all that many people, right? But a 2x growth for me, hopefully in 2 years, would be a lot more people. But now that chunk of people that are in that influx of people at that point is now coming in at a point where you have 200 episodes and not just 200 episodes, but 200 episodes of experience, 200 episodes of time in the saddle, so that what they're seeing is much more refined. And I feel like that is the blessing of that curve, right? Whereas if you're a Dak Shepard or a Barack Obama, where you throw out episode 1 all full of that suck, right? Maximum suck. And you have 10,000 people, 1 million people see it. That's a whole different ballgame, right? And there's a blessings to that too, of not having to go through the grind and the kicks and the questioning of, am I doing the right thing, and balancing all these things and giving up that time with your kids for something that maybe not very many people are going to hear. But there's trade-offs to everything, and you just need to find that and appreciate what you're getting out of it. Whatever situation yours is, you just have to appreciate the good out of it. Just like you said, find the good in that and appreciate it. Don't get bogged down in all the shit that sucks and blame everything else. find the good and lean into that. And if that's enough to keep you going, keep going. And if it ever becomes where the best of the best of what you're getting out of it does not make it worth it, and you would be better served doing something else, then that's okay. But at least you tried. Like you said earlier, at least you tried.
Yeah, I can't imagine. I cannot imagine a day. I can imagine a day where I slowed down, right? I can never imagine a day where I stopped doing this.
Right. And me too. And I can't even imagine a point that I would slow down from where I am now, because right now I'm not going as fast as I want to, right? Like, I feel like right now, all I want to do is speed up, and I want to do more. And I feel like I'm...
Can I throw a stupid idea at you that I've had?
What's that?
And then I actually found a guy who did it on YouTube. So then I was like, oh, maybe it's not that stupid of an idea.
What's that?
Podcast a day for a year.
Yeah, that's something I heard you mention that the other day on your podcast, and I was thinking, fuck, I thought I was on that idea, right? Like, I would love to do 2 a day, right? Like, I mean, that's a wicked goal, but so much of it is...
There's a shit, is it a movie? Shit, I'm forgetting what I saw it on. I want to say it's a documentary. But I'd had the idea before. I'm like, if I don't really want to get to 10,000, what's the quickest way to get to 10,000? Let's do it every day.
Yeah.
Right? Like now I can do the math, and then by the math, this is where we're kind of, but you can imagine. Then I stumbled across, it was a book that talked about this guy, and I'm forgetting his name, which is terrible because people are going to be like, who the hell is this guy talking about? Anyways, a YouTuber back in the early 2000s that decided one day he was going to do on his 35th birthday of all damn things. And for the listener, once again, I turned 35 in a month.
Yeah.
And on his 31st birthday, he was going to release a YouTube video every single day for a year.
Right.
Didn't matter if it was 30 seconds, 2 hours. Didn't care. And his thought was, right now I'm releasing every 3 months a hit that makes me a little bit of money. What if I just started releasing every single day? And even if I only hit,
1 in 10.
Yeah. Or 1 a month, it's still way more than my 1 every 3 months. And now he's like I heard this story. I reached out to him. Nothing, of course, right? My YouTube story.
Yeah, there you go.
But now he's got who gives a shit about, he's got tons of followers. Sounds like he's rich. Sounds like blah, blah, blah.
He's found success. Whatever he recognizes that, he found his success.
I'm sitting here spewing off the things that I'm like, well, whatever that means.
Yeah.
But he's found success.
Yeah.
But it worked, right? Like, it talked about day 30, he's going I just released another junker. And then 31, boom, it hit. 32 hit. 33 didn't, 34, 37, 39 hit. And it just, all of a sudden, it got to where he was hitting all these times. Yeah. Because he's starting getting in the rhythm and started taking some cracks. And
yeah. He's getting better at a much faster rate than he was, too.
And forcing his hand to this is uncomfortable. That's all right. Now I got to learn. Now I got to adjust. Now I got to get better. This worked. This did not work. Instead of taking 10 years to get there, he did it over a year. And I was like, man, that's inspiring.
Yeah. One of the biggest things I've learned over listening to Lex Friedman's podcast and all these guests they have is the power that constraint can do. And it's very powerful mathematic and scientific idea of when you throw purposeful constraints onto something that helps you reach these other milestones. And so many people think that you need freedom all the time, right? And freedom's great, and you need that too to be able to figure out these things. But sometimes enforcing constraints like that of you have to do one every day forces this new area of creativity that you never would have got to without those constraints, because freedom disallows you from getting to those points and to going to those areas. And it's interesting to see that. So that episode a day with how you do them, right? Like I was thinking that in my head of my idea when I try and flesh this out, it was, okay, if I want to do an episode a day, how would I do that? And I thought, okay, it's just you double down on trying to get people on. You be vocal about this, that this is what you're trying to do so that more people are willing. And you try and see as many people as you can get. And now that I've started this solo podcast, just every day you can't get somebody on, I'm doing one by myself. And now I could try that tomorrow. Right now, I have fully fleshed out the idea of what that would look like for me. So how does that look like for you without having a solo? Would you try and load up a month before and get really ahead of the game so you had less pressure? Would you just try and force it every day?
Pressure.
Love the pressure.
Love the pressure.
All right. I love that. So how much? Or I guess my question is, how much thought have you put into it?
How much thought have I put into it?
Yeah.
I've put in enough thought that the only way I can do it is if I'm not working full time. There's no way. The balance of life would be thrown so out of whack that I think I would do myself way more harm by doing it currently on a personal level, family level.
The balance would get thrown out of whack.
Absolutely.
100%.
Now, if tomorrow I didn't have to worry about work, I think I would do it because it would be an absolute challenge. And I look at it like 365 guests. That's what I'd do.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't get, honestly, I'm anyone could come on. And if I got into a serious bind, I'd reach out to my brothers or my dad and boom, now I got that. But I would try for 365 different people in a year. Let's go. I'd have round table. Like I've got some ideas.
Yeah.
But in saying that, I don't know when it can happen.
Right.
Which sucks because like I've teased the idea of 365 is like that's not 30 and 30. And oh shit, that ain't 60 and 60. That's 365 and 365.
Yeah.
Damn, you think 365 people, you got to have 10 in there that would just be absolute gems.
Oh,
maybe 30.
Amazing.
Right?
Gotta.
And at this point, out of 160, there is more than the 3 that I come to mind by. I'm not doing anyone, I mean no one ill will here. The 3 that come to mind was episode 18, Cy Campbell, fell on my lap. 2 brothers sent that to me. I was like, oh, okay. Episode 110, 90 episodes later, was Judy Reeves. That's a relation. She survives a perfect storm. And it's just like, I'm like you, I don't listen to my episodes. I really still listen to it 4 times. 4 fucking times. I just can't, like, just to hurt everything. And then 30 episodes later is Byron Christopher. And it's just like, wow. And that was somebody who listens, gave me that one. So 2 or 3 that I've had have come off of people's suggestions. Right. So at this point, I'm kind of like, let's throw caution in the wind. You do 365 and 365. I'm going to have my guests lined up, and I'm going to say, if I was doing it, I'd say, listen, listeners, you got anyone? Let me know.
Yeah,
let's
hit
go.
Me up. Let's go.
Because there's no bad suggestion at this point because I'm going to do 365 and 365.
For sure.
Even if the listens dive and I don't care. This is the goal. This is the challenge. This is what I want to do. And after a year, we're going to go back to whatever. But by then, I'm probably going to know.
And you'll learn a lot about yourself in that time too. And you'll get so much better. No. That idea is so cool to me. And that's one idea too. That is just one example. I have so many ideas for things I want to do with this and place I want to take it. But exactly, it's about finding the right time for them that isn't going to completely throw out the balance too. Because I have ideas for the podcast and then I have podcast adjacent ideas that are outside the podcast, right? Like one that I've talked about openly on the stream that I'm working on, or on the podcast, is streaming video games, and which is something we talked about in our first episode. Yeah. You said, I have no idea about that, right? So I know that's not your world, but video games, I loved video games growing up. That was always something that I really enjoyed, but now I don't play them. I just don't have the time. I podcast and I work, and that kind of fills up the time, and I can't. And I thought, how can I find a way to make it so that it's part of this? Because now if I start streaming, I advertise the podcast on the streaming. Now this is helping this goal of this thing that I truly want to do. And now it's working with that. Now I'm not throwing my time away by wasting my time on video games. And also it's time on the mic in front of people. It's doing the same thing. It's maybe not the exact same skill, but there's going to be some crossover there. I promise you that me getting into streaming and getting in front of people and trying to work with an audience, work with a chat, that is going to make me a better podcaster as well. Maybe not 1-to-1 translation, but even if it's only 10%, right? If you do 10 hours of a podcast or of streaming, it's 1 hour's worth of practice on the podcast, right? So it's a third of a podcast. But even still, at least you're working towards that. And because it's something that I love doing, that I'd be bringing back into my life, right? Same with playing guitar. I used to love playing guitar. I haven't played guitar 3 years. Like maybe I say that, but every once in a while. And that's something I'm really excited to. So after this podcast, I'm going to go in and I taught Kale to play guitar a couple years ago, Jason's son that you just met in there, and he's loving it. He is head over heels for guitar and he just loves it, but I haven't played it. But now that's another thing with streaming is you don't have to stream just video games. You can stream guitar. So now that's another area in my life where I kind of miss doing it and I would like to bring it in, but it just doesn't fit. And that's one area where you can start bringing all these things back in and just finding different areas to bring it in. And that's one idea. And then maybe when the podcast ends, I'll tell you a couple other ideas that I have that are way crazier than that, way more expensive than that. And like I said, with the UFC fighters, I am so confident that that's going to happen one day that I don't think about it as a pipe dream that might happen. It's, oh, this is going to happen. Just the timeline of whether that's 25 years from now or 5 years from now is what's going to dictate by how much work I can put into this now. And that's exciting to me. And I feel like there's just no end to the types of ideas you can have. And like the 365 and all those ones. But what excites me is just that there's so much opportunity in so many areas and so many things we can do with that freedom that we get with having our own gig. Nobody tells you what to do. Nobody tells you who to have on. Nobody tells you how long to do it. I'm guessing, but nobody tells me that.
Well, I had the what if question brought to me about 2 weeks ago. What if, well, and we've already kind of talked about it, but it was, for me, it was, what if the NHL came tomorrow and said, we want you to, here's a boatload of money, but we want you to talk to NHL players. Mm-hmm. That's it.
And you have to shut down what you're doing.
It's going to be Shaun Newman podcast, but it's only NHL players.
And what was your answer?
No.
And,
maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I don't trust myself enough that in a week's time, Gary Bettman walks in and says, man, we love what you're doing. Here's $1 million.
Yeah.
Come do it for us. But the funny thing is, for me, I just think of like Tim McAuliffe, right? Like I've had Tim McAuliffe on. He's on a national show on Sportsnet.
Mm-hmm.
And when I talk to him, see a depressed guy who's like the best, but just says things like, he said, it looks like you're doing really good. And I said, yeah, I don't know. Big fish in a small pond, maybe, right? Like, I don't know. I got to find me a small pond. And I'll go, you're in Toronto, the biggest market in Canada on a national television show, and you're not like just like loving life. There's some lesson there. Mm-hmm. You just have to be willing to look at it.
Yeah.
And so for me, $1 million would be hard to turn down. Right. I know that I say that number because I'm like, that would be like, I think my wife would slap me. Yeah. I think she'd be like, do it for a year and then just be done.
Yeah.
Let's go get the $1 million. Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm. We'll go get the $1 million.
Yeah.
But I guess from all the literature I've read, from the people I've interacted with, even Bob Strum. Bob Strum, so he's a guy that 40 plus years in hockey all over the place. He's got 1 year in Detroit. He goes from the WHL, I want you to think about this, from the WHL to the assistant general manager of the Detroit Red Wings in the 90s.
Wow.
And I asked him about it. And what I should have asked after I asked him about it is he said that I believe, I believe he said, my former wife and I had a couple of young kids and it was just too much too soon and I was cross and, it just kind of threw the balance out of whack. And you could tell I struck a nerve by asking about Detroit. I had no idea it was there and I didn't follow up with it because I saw that it struck, whatever. Mm-hmm. But what it reminded me is like money and prestige and everything is awesome. Mm-hmm. But if you lose everything you hold dear just to have it, fuck, it ain't worth shit.
Yeah.
Like, this life is like, fuck, man, I love coming and sitting here and having a bullshit with you. I really do. But if it jeopardized the things I hold most important, then it ain't worth it.
Right.
And so the podcast, we go back to you can't imagine a day where you just aren't podcasting anymore or not podcasting as much or whatever. And it's like, I thought the same thing too. But there will become a day where I have to choose if it isn't full time. Let's assume it's just still at nights. There's going to come a day sooner than I think where I'm going to have to choose. And I've already made the choice in my head right now, probably a year ago.
Yeah.
Family's going to take it. Like the podcast, if I got to go down to once a week, once every 3 weeks, if that's what it is in a couple years, because it isn't there, that's fine.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to lose. Like even, you push it as hard as you want. I hope this makes sense. Think about this. If in 3 years I was pushing as hard as I could and I made it into something I really wanted, but now my wife has left me or my kids don't know me,
right?
It's going to suffer because even though you love yourself, you've left who you were.
Yeah.
I can't do that. And so it's like, I'm pushing it as hard as I can go without jeopardizing myself.
Who you are. Yeah. And I think that's very important. I feel like the key to that is to ask yourself those tough questions and to figure out who that is that you are and what do you value so that you can hold on to that. Because I feel like so many people fall into that trap because they're so unaware of who they are and what they value that they can get pulled by that money or that fame or that thing that pulls them away. And they get so far down that road before they recognize that they don't recognize who they are because they didn't know who they were to begin with. Right? They know I'm over here. I might have the money and the fame and I've lost all these things and I feel different. They can recognize I'm not who I was then, but even then I didn't know who I was. They didn't know what to hold on to. But to hear you say that and to recognize what you hold dear and that your family matters first and your wife and your kids, those are the things that tells me that you know what those are. And that will allow you to recognize when you deviate from that path, which is very much a Jordan Peterson thing to say, right? Like he talks about that of recognizing your values and recognizing your aims. And if you are hiding things in the fog, like he says, you're not going to be able to recognize when you're deviating from that path or when your aim is getting away from it. So I'm very glad to hear that you have that. And I don't worry at all that that's where you're going to get to because I know that. And I feel like that's where I want to work every day to make sure I'm understanding about myself. I don't have the kids and the wife to put up against that of what I don't want to lose, right? That's
but the kids and the wife is another way of pointing out your core values.
Right, exactly. And where I'm going with it is I have to do that work to figure out what that is for me because right now when I think about it, it's like, what would I give up the podcast for right now? That's a tough one to ask.
So what if the UFC walked in tomorrow and said, we got $1 million for you?
But I have to give up the podcast.
No, it can be called your podcast, but we want you to interview strictly UFC fighters.
Yeah, I wouldn't do it, right? Like that, to me, that would be giving up the podcast. Would there be a price?
$2 million.
No, it had nothing to do with price.
$100 million.
Okay, $100 million. Right, like if you get, I guess it does have a price, but to me, but in my head, it's just okay. Pay me $100 million. I'll do it for 2 years, and then I'll say, "Fuck you guys for doing that," and I can do it for 2 years because then I'll open me up. And
what
all
do you
the other
think
things
about Joe Rogan getting $100 million for Spotify?
I think good for Joe Rogan, bad for the fans. This is just me with a personal thing. Is I listened to Rogan for a long time in a lot of ways. And now he went to Spotify and it's hot garbage dog shit. It pauses. It'll buffer for like 6 minutes. You can't listen to it. They're hard to download. Even if you do download them, you can't. It's just such a piss poor platform for such a transcendent voice that the world needs right now to have that gated behind that of just a shitty platform and no other options. I would pay $10 a month to have a private RSS feed to listen to it in whatever podcast app I wanted right now. That hurts me because I feel like I was on that journey with him and I got to watch him reach these heights and all this. And I was cheering louder than anybody else that he got that 100 million, and that's not his fault. I'm sure Spotify promised him, this is going to work perfect. This is not going to affect it. This is going to be just as listenable as it was when you were on YouTube and all the other places, but it's not. And that sucks. And that hurts me, but I'm still so happy that he got it and he got that money.
How many episodes have you listened since he went to pot?
All of them. I've listened to every Joe Rogan other than maybe 100 of them spread out between from episode 1 to 300. I've probably listened to 200 of those, but there's probably 100 in those I haven't, but every other one I've listened to every episode.
It's a weird thing because I'm sure Spotify and everybody told them this. When you switch from Apple or YouTube over to Spotify specifically, you're going to lose a part of your audience just because they don't want to change.
Yeah.
Which sounds ridiculous.
Yeah.
I'm that part. I've listened to one episode. The one episode was fantastic. But I just can't get over that he's on Spotify, and I don't know why I don't want to switch. I'm just like, I don't want to.
And I get that, and that is totally fine. And what hurts me is that I was not that. I was completely ready to switch. I downloaded Spotify when he announced the deal, and there was months and months before to try and get used to Spotify and how it was, and wanted it to. I wanted it to be good, and if it worked, I would change it. I have no problem. And I was trying to see if this is as good of a podcast app as Apple Podcasts and all these other things, I'll just transfer all the podcasts I listen to over to there, and that will be my new listening app. But it's such garbage dog shit that I can't, and it pisses me off, and I kick and scream, and even when I have it playing on my desktop computer, that is state of the art, one of the nicest computers you can buy with 300 megabyte internet, the fact that it can still pause and buffer for fucking 6 minutes drives me. I want to strangle somebody at Spotify. The fact that they can have that. And it's not just that they can have that as an issue, but the fact that they've now gated what I see maybe behind Jordan Peterson and a couple other people, the most important voice that we have right now behind shit like that, when it should be, a democratized good. It should be like water. Everybody should have access to this because it's that important. And I know that's me being biased because he has really impacted my life and changed me, but I truly believe that. It's like if you took Jordan Peterson's stuff and put it behind this crazy paywall. So now if you wanted to take his book, you had to go through a training session to get his books or something. It hits me in a way where I just feel like it's not right. It's one of those core values that it just touches on with me that pisses me off. And it has nothing to do with him selling out or any of those things, because I'm sure he was promised that this is going to work perfectly. I don't blame Joe Rogan for this at all. It's Spotify that they can't get their shit together.
100 million is 100 million.
100%. Give her. Let her buck. I can't blame a guy for that at all.
In saying that, I wonder how much he was making in a year just doing what he was doing.
So much money. And in so many different ways than people think. He had a sponsorship and stuff. Remember when he stopped doing live episodes? I don't know if I've told you this before. And he's talked about this a little bits and pieces, and then I've read up on it and done bits and pieces on it too, is he was finding, so he would do a live episode, he'd put it out, and the reach he got, there'd be people that would listen, and if he talked about what is something around here, I'm trying to find, Coors Original. If he talks about Coors Original on the podcast, there's people that are jumping on and investing in Coors the next day because they can see the spikes. It's just such an effect, right? And you'd have to be actively listening to figure out what those are and what is impactful and how we talked about it, right? Or if you talked about things negatively, but they were playing the markets off of what he was saying. So he stopped putting them out live and he pre-records them. And now he and his team can do that. And they do it. And now these things that he was talking about all the time, like Traeger grills, you notice that he doesn't talk about Traeger grills anymore that much? Doesn't advertise. You know who the owner of Traeger grills is? Or part ownership? Joe Rogan. Because he's realizing he has such effect. Why would he just get sponsorship money from why would he get sponsored? Why wouldn't I buy into your company and blow you up on this and make even more money? I can take you to the moon. To recognize that. I feel like people have such a misunderstanding of how to and what monetization is going to look like. We've never had things like podcasts that are that impactful. So we don't know how to monetize something like that. We don't know how to monetize Joe Rogan. He's figuring it out, and other people are trying to monetize on him and copy his model and figure that way out. But we've never had something like that, and he's finding all these new ways that's exciting to me. I'm not after the money, and what makes me so excited for him is that with all that money and all this money he's making, he doesn't care about the money. He's just using it to help people, and he's building his comedy utopia down in Houston and building this comedy club not to make money he helps people out and he gives it to other comedians and he lifts people up. He takes that money and to do good things with it. And I feel like that is a very noble thing. And I feel like you see all these people like Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates that are just making all this money hand over fist and then find ways to make it look like they are charitable and find all these ways to put their name on it. But what Joe does is just real positive, impactful giving back. in every which way and at all times, just and being a good person while he does it.
It helps that Joe has a show where he talks for hours on end, gets drunk, high, et cetera, and you're talking about two guys. Like, the reason I'm doing this is because I listen to a Joe Rogan podcast. That's exactly why I got into it. There's such like, I've never met the guy, but I assume he wouldn't disappoint. Mm-hmm. And when you talk about what he's trying to do and the passion I see behind how much you enjoy Joe, I'm like, I get that. Yeah. Because, listen, my favorite podcast to this day is Joe Rogan. I haven't listened to a Joe Rogan podcast in like 2 months. Yeah. Has nothing more to do with than he's just on Spotify, and I just can't get my brain to get over to it. But he's still my favorite podcast. Yeah. I haven't picked up another one. I love Jordan Peterson. Love his podcast. It's great. But it ain't my, like, I think Joe Rogan is, Joe Rogan. I think Jordan Peterson is a subpar interviewer. He is such a knowledgeable person. Mm-hmm. He should never be the interviewer. He should always be the interviewee and just sit there and talk and get in. Just, that's what he should do.
For sure.
Joe Rogan is, he's good, man. The last one I listened to was Ira Glasser.
Yeah.
And him talking about
from the
freedom of speech and
what's that acronym for that? The CLAU. Anyway, the academy that protects free speech in the U.S., right? Like the UCLA. No,
like, can you imagine allowing the KKK to walk in the hometown of a guy who survived Auschwitz?
Yeah.
Like, it's fucking batshit crazy. And yet when he talked about it, I went, it makes sense. Like, actually, it makes complete sense.
Yeah. And
then when it ended up happening, the guy from Auschwitz had a bigger group of people come and march, and the KKK never
didn't
came
even show
anyways.
up. Didn't even show up, right? And
because they went, whoa, fuck that.
And those are the types of impactful messages that come out. Him, Daryl Davis, those kind of guys that come on. That Joe Rogan, he does, like, he chases his passion, but there's times where he just says, like, this is somebody that the world needs to see. And that's something that I want to model with my podcasts as well.
I wonder how much Joe Rogan enlists his audience. Like, I know that's how he got, like I'm pretty sure that's how he got, like, David Goggins. And there's a bunch of, like, guys like David Goggins that came through his audience being like, you need to have this person on. Right. And then he probably has a team that looks into it and makes sure, you need to have this guy on, right? But I really, as the progression of the podcast grows and the more people I have on that are guest suggestions, like, I wonder how many Joe Rogan, like he like Miley Cyrus says she wants to come on. Yeah, sure. We'll have Miley say. Yeah. Like, some famous Matthew McConaughey. Sure. Yeah. You're releasing a book. Great.
Yeah.
But like, he's got to enlist his army like nobody's business.
Mm-hmm. And I think also on the flip side of exactly what you just said, I think there's huge names every day asking to come on his podcast that he says no to because he has no interest in them, that are wild names that guys like you and me would be over the moon to have on, but he's just at that place where if it doesn't interest him and he talks about it.
Well, he's at the pinnacle.
Right? Oh, it's so amazing.
Like, he's so... I imagine the wait list for his podcast must be something surreal.
Months and months. And that's just the people that have gone through all that vetting process, because he talks about how insulated he is away from people to be able to ask him. Like, you've got to go through so many people to get to him to even get your ask in. And then the odds of you being said yes to, and then even if you get said yes to, it's okay, when can we fit you in the next couple of years, right? Like, that is the level that he is on at this point. And he makes exceptions, and he always talks about it, right? If it's people that he knows, he'll do the booking. He still does the booking himself with his friends. But then when it's people that he doesn't know, he has a team and he just says, like, hey, this scientist, he really interests me. Can you reach out and try and get him on, right? And the amount of no's he gets are so little. And when they do, like Coulter Wall from Saskatchewan, one of the most amazing country singers that has come out in the last few years. He sounds like fucking Johnny Cash. He's absolutely incredible. Joe Rogan reaches out to him and he says no. What?
No, he didn't. He said,
I'm ranching.
He said, I'm ranching. I'll come when I'm done.
How fucking badass is that? That's one of the most badass things I've heard in the last fucking couple of years.
Couple years? probably my lifetime.
That is fucking ballsy, man.
But isn't that a guy? When we talk about the what if scenario.
Yeah.
Our what if scenario is somebody comes and offers us $1 million to be who we aren't. Somebody just came and offered Coulter Wall something that,
it's more than $1 million. And a guest appearance on a Joe Rogan is way more than $1 million. Way more.
But you understand what I'm saying.
And he said no because that's not who he's going to be, right? I 100% agree.
He might go on here in the next couple of months. Like when I've read it was he's in the middle of ranching. Yeah. I'm not coming.
Yeah.
I'll come at the end, but I'm not coming right now.
Yeah. Which is so but it'd be the same thing, like to bring it to our level. Nick, it'd be UFC walk or it's exact same thing,
right? Here's $1 million. We want you to come. I'll come in 6 months. Your parents would be going, you're going to do what?
Yeah.
Get the fuck on the show.
Yeah.
Like it's UFC.
Yeah.
It's Joe Rogan. Yeah. Like get over there.
Yeah.
Coulter Wall's making a great living for himself. He's
and he's undeniable. He doesn't need anybody to tell him what it is. You listen to his music and you see what he is. And to have the faith in that is what I look up to. And to have whatever that value, that's his value system, what he has faith in, right? Whatever me and you talk about funding, or whatever that is for us, and to stick with that and to make sure that that's always at the pinnacle and what we're aiming for at all times. I just love that he has it figured out. And every time I'm trying to chase that myself, but every time I see it in others, I get fired up because I'm so excited that somebody else is. And it's just one of those things.
He's the first person I've seen it. Who was the last person you've seen turn down something like that? I can't think of a single soul.
Nothing's coming to mind right away.
Like in my entire life, in 34, almost 35 years, I've never seen anyone turn down the golden ticket.
Yeah.
It's a golden fucking ticket.
Yeah.
Take the golden ticket, go on, have it, talk about your voice, talk about whatever. Who gives a shit? Coulter Wall is a household fucking name. Now he's a household name for turning it down.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, all he had to do is take the golden ticket. 35 years, nobody's ever done that. That's what makes it stand out.
Yeah. So cool. And what also makes it stand out is that guys like you and me that know what that move, what it is to say no. Some people could argue that he knew what he was doing, but when you know who Coulter, not to say that I know who Coulter Wall is, but from the way the situation played out, it was for no other reason than his values of what ranching means to him and what it was, that it wasn't that play, that it wasn't disingenuous in any way, because I think that play is there to say.
He had no way to know. It could have backfired on him
100%.
The only thing I'll say is I have no idea even how that remotely felt, because tomorrow, if you came and put a briefcase in front of us with $1 million in it, the podcast, I think it'd be a very tough thing to close that up and walk away from it.
Right.
Now, I'm telling you right now, with the figurative briefcase, I'm telling you right now, I wouldn't be interested. But I'm telling you, if the physical money was in front of you,
you'd have to think about it for sure.
If fucking Joe Rogan called about it, said the NHL wants you to come do this, I'd be like, who are you?
Yeah.
Right? Like, what is going on right now?
Yeah.
Guess I shouldn't say Joe Rogan. Let's call it Wayne Gretzky.
Yeah.
All I'm getting at is like, even for us two sitting here, it's like, it's so easy to talk about.
Yeah.
But when Joe Rogan's booking manager is calling your manager and your manager walks in and says, oh, by the way, Joe Rogan called today. Who? Like, I don't care who Coulter Wall is. There's no way he didn't go. Like, that isn't the Tonight Show. That isn't whatever show you want. It's Joe Rogan. Like, that would have at least given him a little bit of pause.
Yeah.
Still cool that he turned it down.
So fucking cool. Ugh. I just hope that I can do something that fucking cool at one point in my life. That is fucking awesome. Well, Shaun, I've kept you here over 3 hours.
Oh, sure.
I mean, I've kept you here all night, and I'll keep keeping you here all night if you let me. So I better wrap it up. I love talks like this. The genres or whatever you want to call it that we got to talk about, just where the conversation meandered to in the different areas that were just so wildly different. Those are my favorite ones. It's just to be able to talk and let the conversation go wherever it is And it's so much fun to have a guy like yourself that's willing to just go wherever it's going. And thanks for coming out. Thanks for having some beers with me. And
Nick, thanks for coming to Lloyd, man. I mean that. It's cool that I'm following your journey along. I wish you nothing but, well, I'll say it, right? Hurry up and get to the UFC so I can come down and see you, right? Because
there you go.
I look at it like, I go big time tomorrow. You go big time tomorrow. We all go big time. Yeah. Great. Let's pull each other along.
Exactly.
And have some fun.
Let's all pull each other along. And that was something I recognized in you when I first found you randomly on Instagram. That got thrown into my feed on the Explore page of your podcast. And then I started listening to a couple, and I see that in you, that you want everyone to do well and you want people to come along. And that's why I felt comfortable reaching out and asking you. And as we get to know each other more.
What the hell would the mountaintop be if there wasn't somebody there to fucking share a cold Coors with you? Honestly, it wouldn't be that much fun. I don't care who you are.
I agree.
Well, thanks for having me on.
Thanks for coming, John. All right. Hope you guys enjoyed that episode with Shaun Newman. Please go check out his podcast. Go check out Bike for Breakfast. Check out everything he's done. He has some really amazing episodes. He's had some huge names in hockey on and fighting and all over, some real Canadian legends. And I really enjoy what he's doing. I think you guys will enjoy it too. So please head over and support him. That's the best way to support this podcast, is to show the guests that if they come on, they get something out of it too. On my side, please subscribe. Go to the Instagram page, Twitter page, follow me there, the YouTube channel. I know I say this every week, but we finally got another episode uploaded on the YouTube page. Let's fucking go. Episode 49 with Uncour is up right now, and hopefully 50 through whatever 69 this episode is are going to be up there soon to follow and get caught up. So that's exciting. If you want to go over to the YouTube channel, give me a subscription there. That really helps. YouTube is kind of the future of this thing, and I need to get better on making sure I have them up and not 2 months late. But I will work on that if you guys work on supporting the YouTube channel, and we can call that a fair deal. Seems fair to me anyways. Probably not. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I can't speak highly enough of what I thought of it. And if you do enjoy it, please let me know. Please let Shaun know. And I'll see you on the next one. 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 I'll see you on the next one.